Chapter 21, A Delicate Balance. Margaret Hunter stood in front of me, her smug expression etched across her sharp features. Just as she prepared another verbal assault, a sound caught both of our attention. The faint creak of a door opening. Turning instinctively, my breath hitched. Grace Hunter, Margaret's daughter, slowly emerged from one of the examination rooms. She looked pale, her shoulders slumped under some invisible weight. A trembling hand clutched her stomach protectively, while the other held tightly to a of crumpled medical papers. Her scent hit me before the sight fully sank in, a familiar mix of distress and the same hormonal changes I was experiencing. My throat tightened. There was no doubting it. Grace had come to this hospital under a circumstance much like mine. Margaret's smugness vanished. Her sharp posture faltered almost instantly as worry overtook her. She hurried to her daughter's side, her hand reaching for her arm. "Grace!" Margaret's voice was unrecognizable, softer, trembling with motherly concern. "What is it? What happened? Are you okay?" Grace flinched slightly at her touch, but didn't move away fully. Her voice was a bare whisper, almost lost to my ears. "Mom, please, let's just go." Her hand pressed harder against her stomach, a clear attempt to shield herself from more than just the physical ache. My own hand instinctively brushed against my abdomen as I watched her, an echo of her pain resonating inside me. Bella whimpered, her instincts tuned into Grace's suffering in a way only wolves could sense. Margaret hesitated. "Grace, sweetheart?" "Mom," Grace's voice broke, trembling with suppressed tears. "Can we please go? I just want to leave." For a long moment, Margaret seemed paralyzed, her beta energy completely overshadowed by her maternal instincts. Finally, she wrapped a protective arm around her daughter and guided her toward the exit. "Let's get you home," she murmured, her voice tender and full of worry as they disappeared down the hallway. Silence filled the space around me once more. I inhaled deeply, trying to steady myself. Seeing Grace like that stirred something raw and unshakable inside me. But Margaret was nothing if not relentless. It wasn't long before she returned alone, her composure snapped back into place like armor. The concern she'd shown her daughter was now buried deep under an icy hostility directed solely at me. Her voice carried a sharp edge as she fixed her cold gaze on me. "If you even think about gossiping through pack circles about what you just saw—" I interrupted her, my chin lifting slightly. "What? Sharing a visit to a medical facility? I see that you have plenty of reasons to worry about rumors, Margaret. Perhaps more than I do." Her jaw tightened. "Do not." "Careful," I cut her off smoothly. "Were I the type to spread rumors, I might find it quite interesting what a 17-year-old wolf happens to be dealing with." My tone sharpened. "Or has Grace turned 18 already? My apologies for losing count." Margaret froze. Her hands curled into tight fists at her sides, and her wolf energy spiked faintly, revealing just how close she was to losing control. "Are you threatening me?" I tilted my head, calm and deliberate, as I replied, "I'm simply exchanging courtesies. Isn't that what we're doing here, Margaret?" Her eyes narrowed sharply, her nostrils flaring. "Grace's situation is none of your business." "Just as mine is none of yours," I responded lightly. My voice, though calm, carried the weight of my Luna position. The standoff that followed was thick enough to choke on. Margaret's lips parted as though she were about to sling another insult, but she snapped them shut just as quickly. I sighed theatrically, rubbing my temple as if burdened by exhaustion. "Margaret, I suggest you drop the pretense. I'm tired, and I'm sure you have more pressing matters to attend to." There was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes before she straightened her posture. Without another word, she turned abruptly and stormed out of the waiting area. The tension lingered for a moment longer, but as the sound of her heels faded away, I felt my body relax slightly. Inside, Bella growled softly, her unease fading into quiet relief. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to focus on steadying my breathing. The confrontation had been draining, but not for the reasons Margaret might have expected. I had no intentions of spreading Grace's secret, none at all. The young wolf's pain was far too familiar, her vulnerability far too real. Margaret could spin whatever threats she liked, but I wouldn't exploit Grace. I couldn't. Unbidden, memories from my own past tugged at me. Those early days when whispers of betrayal and weakness surrounded me, when I was cornered like prey. No young wolf deserved to face the weight of pack politics at such a tender age. I had escaped only by sheer luck and Aaron's intervention. Grace deserved the same chance to heal without the wolves closing in around her. Freya! Emily's voice pulled me back to the present. She was hurrying toward me with several bags in hand, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Sorry it took so long," she said quickly, setting the bags down. "I wasn't sure what you'd be able to keep down, so I got a little of everything." The unmistakable scent of high-protein snacks and nutrient-rich meals for pregnant wolves filled the air. I blinked in surprise but managed a faint smile. "You didn't have to." "Stop," Emily interrupted firmly, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, I did. I don't care what you're dealing with, but skipping meals is not an option." I sagged slightly in my seat, suddenly overwhelmed by her kindness. Bella wagged her tail faintly, a rare moment of comfort amidst the turmoil. As I reached for one of the covered dishes, I paused, a question I hadn't asked her in years suddenly burning on my tongue. "Emily," I murmured, keeping my gaze on my hands, "if I were an alpha male, would you have accepted my mate mark?" She froze, visibly startled. Her lips parted, and she looked at me like she wasn't sure if I was joking. "Freya, answer honestly," I pressed softly. Her gaze softened after a moment, and she lowered herself into the seat beside me. "I wouldn't even hesitate, if you were my alpha." She trailed off, but finished with certainty. "I'd be proud to take your mark. No question." Something twisted painfully in my chest. Her loyalty, her declaration, it all echoed too loudly against something I didn't want to acknowledge. "It's because I helped you before, isn't it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "What?" She blinked, caught off guard. "You said it yourself. Loyalty stems from gratitude," I murmured. "Even if someone saved your life when you felt helpless. Like you, and like Aaron." Emily stiffened immediately, her mouth opening in protest. "Freya, no, I didn't mean it like..." I shook my head, cutting her off before she could continue. My voice felt like it wasn't mine as I murmured faintly, "He probably thinks Caroline is a good wolf, too." The words hung heavily in the air, my chest tightening painfully around every syllable. Emily's face fell, her eyes wide with regret. "Freya, wait!" But her panic didn't matter. The parallel had already struck me straight in the heart. Bella's faint, mournful whimper only deepened the ache spreading through me. Chapter 22. Mysterious Threats. The protein shake sat heavy in my stomach as I took another reluctant sip. It wasn't as though I had much of an appetite to begin with. Emily eyed me from across the clinic waiting room, her expression filled with concern. "Come on, Freya," she prodded softly. "Just a few more bites of the meat, it'll help." My stomach churned at the thought of another bite, and Bella whimpered in agreement. The faint pangs of nausea hadn't left me since the morning, and the events of the day had left me emotionally drained on top of everything else. I shook my head, pushing the container away. "I can't. Please, Emily, don't force me." Emily's lips pressed into a thin line. She sighed but began packing the remains of the meal into her bag. Each movement was deliberate, almost like she was trying to rein in her frustration. "All right," she relented, though her words were heavy. "But don't think I'm letting you skip dinner tonight. You need your strength. For the cub, if not for yourself." Her words made my stomach twist, and I simply nodded, not trusting my voice. "Let's get out of here," Emily said softly, standing and motioning toward the exit. "This place isn't helping." I followed her, my legs weak beneath me. The sterile smell of the clinic followed us as we walked toward the door. My mouth was dry, and my thoughts drifted uneasily, scattered and confused. Before we made it outside, sharp voices caught both of our attention. They echoed through the hallway, tense and loud. "I forbid it. Do you hear me, Grace? Absolutely not." Margaret Hunter's cutting tone was unmistakable. I glanced toward the source of the commotion. Margaret stood just beyond one of the examination rooms, her beta authority clear in her posture and voice. Beside her was Grace, her teenage daughter. Grace's tear-streaked face and trembling frame spoke volumes of the stress she was under. "But Mother, Mark isn't like that. You don't know him," Grace pleaded, her voice hitching with desperation. Margaret's expression was cold and unyielding. "He's an Omega, Grace. Do you understand what that means? You are not to see him. That's the end of it." Grace shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love him. Why is that so wrong?" Margaret's eyes blazed with fury. She took a step closer to her daughter, lowering her voice but losing none of the steel in her words. "Do not test me, Grace. You will find a proper beta or alpha mate. Do you want to bring disgrace to this family?" Emily clicked her tongue beside me. "Poor girl," she muttered, shaking her head. "She's too young to understand how pack hierarchy works. Margaret's harsh, but—" She trailed off. "Well, you know how it is for beta families." I nodded silently but said nothing. My chest tightened at the sight of Grace's heartbreak, though I quickly moved my gaze away. It wasn't my place to intervene. My phone suddenly buzzed in my pocket, breaking the tension. Emily's ears perked as I pulled it out. "Maybe it's Aaron," she said with sudden hope, her wolf's excitement shining through her voice. Perhaps Logan finally realized, but the screen displayed an unknown number. My heart sank, and a strange unease prickled at the back of my neck. Something about this felt wrong. "Hello?" I answered cautiously, my voice quieter than I intended. "Luna Freya?" came a cold, detached voice. The syllables of my name lingered, deliberate and sharp. "This is Rebecca Winters. I'm sure you've heard of me. I'm a close friend of Caroline's." I gripped the phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. "What do you want?" She chuckled lightly, though it held no warmth. Her next words sent Bella growling faintly in my mind. "You know exactly what I want. Let's not waste time playing games. We both know about your situation." Her tone made my heart race, though outwardly I remained silent. "We need to talk," Rebecca continued, her voice dipping in a way that made my unease grow. "I'll text you the location. You'll come, won't you?" Before I could muster a response, the line disconnected abruptly. "Freya, who was it?" Emily's face was curious yet suspicious as she watched me lower the phone. "Caroline's friend," I replied after a pause. "A woman named Rebecca Winters. She says she wants to meet." Emily's expression darkened instantly, her protective instincts flaring. "What? And why would you ever entertain that?" A buzz followed as a message popped up on my screen, a time and the address of the Moonlight Cafe. Emily peered over at it and scoffed. "Unbelievable. How does Caroline even know about the pregnancy? Did Aaron tell her? That pitying snake likely ran crying to her, didn't he?" "Emily," I interrupted sharply, though my voice lacked its usual strength. "Don't Emily me," she snapped. Her pacing was building up, and I could feel the anger radiating off of her. "Aaron was supposed to be your mate. Instead, he's humiliating you by having his pathetic friends interfere with your life, and for what? To protect Caroline's precious feelings?" I flinched at her harsh words. She wasn't wrong, and that made it all the more painful. "You're not going," she declared firmly, crossing her arms and glaring at the phone as though it personally offended her. "As Luna of Northern Ridge Pack, you do not bow to demands from wolves of other territories." "I wasn't planning to," I admitted quietly. Truthfully, I had no intention of going, but the whole situation was wearing me down. Emily nodded approvingly, yet kept pacing, her wolf clearly on edge. "Caroline knows that if you keep this cub, she'll lose any leverage she has over Aaron. This is an intimidation tactic, Freya, nothing more." I let her voice wash over me, my thoughts clouded and heavy. What had my life become? I glanced nervously at the clock on the wall of the Moonlight Cafe. My fingers drummed incessantly against the wooden table as my thoughts swirled with anxiety. "It's been 20 minutes, I murmured, barely realizing I had spoken aloud. Rebecca, seated across from me, rolled her eyes impatiently. "Relax. She'll show," she said with complete confidence. "Are you sure?" I frowned, picking up my coffee cup only to put it back down untouched. "It's just, what if she doesn't?" Rebecca leaned back in her chair, her wolf radiating self-assurance. "Trust me, Caroline, she won't risk us telling anyone. She'll come." Even so, I couldn't ignore the growing tension in my chest. "Maybe we should offer her something," I suggested hesitantly. "A compromise. Territory concessions or—" "You're kidding, right?" Rebecca cut in sharply, her voice dripping with disbelief. "You can't seriously think that'll work." I flinched at the fire in her tone. "This is the same woman who slept with Aaron, knowing damn well his heart belongs to you," Rebecca hissed. "She got herself pregnant to trap him and keep her title as Luna, and you want to offer her something? No, Caroline. What she deserves is to be put in her place." Her words echoed my own anger, though it made me uneasy to hear them so plainly. "We already warned her outside Blue Moon Club," I pointed out, though even I heard the uncertainty in my voice. And she ignored us, Rebecca retorted. Her steely gaze met mine. That woman thinks Aaron's her lifeline. She thinks she can cling to him and that baby to stay relevant. I looked down at the untouched coffee in my hands. Rebecca spoke the thoughts I couldn't admit to myself. She won't come, I said softly after a moment. She's too proud, too stubborn. Then we'll call again, Rebecca said crisply, pulling out her phone. Let's see what kind of trick she's playing now. Chapter 23. Schemes and Resolve. Carolyn's. The nerves hadn't left me since I deleted the text from Freya's phone 2 days ago. My mind kept replaying the moment, over and over. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would Freya text Aaron instead of telling him face-to-face about the pregnancy? Was she afraid of him? No, it wasn't fear. It was manipulation. I was sure of it. She didn't have the courage to confront him directly, and that made me laugh bitterly to myself. But I couldn't take a deep breath. Instead of feeling relief, my anxiety only grew each hour. What if Aaron somehow found out? What if someone slipped and told him about the cub? I hadn't been able to rest. Over the past 2 days, I stuck to him like glue. Every chance I got, I made sure I was nearby. Whether it was showing up at evening runs or sitting in his office while he worked, I stayed close. Caroline, he said yesterday, glancing at me as I typed at the desk across from him. You should relax. You've been at all the meetings this week. Go for a run or take the night off. I smiled, masking my worry easily. Oh, I just want to help, Aaron. You're dealing with so much already. But the truth was, I couldn't leave. I couldn't risk him stumbling onto the truth. Not now. Last night, during a small gathering with pack allies at the lodge, I finally saw my chance. Aaron had been reserved all evening, but I managed to steer him toward the bar. You deserve to unwind, I told him, pouring him a glass of whiskey. I shouldn't, he muttered, though he didn't stop me from handing him the drink. His golden wolf eyes glinted with exhaustion. Busy day tomorrow. He drank it anyway, and I made sure his glass stayed filled the rest of the evening. It was easy to act concerned, brushing my hand lightly across his arm every time I coaxed another sip out of him. You're pushing me tonight, he said at one point, raising his brow. Just making sure you let yourself relax, Aaron, I told him with a soft smile. The drink had its effect. By the end of the night, he was passed out in the lodge guest room, his breathing steady and deep. That's when I seized the moment. Sliding his phone just slightly from his pocket, I dialed Freya's number. The phone only rang once before she picked up. Yes, Aaron? Her voice was low, and I could hear the hesitation in it. It's me, I said, soft and deliberate, though the sharpness in her tone when she realized it wasn't it. Aaron sent an unexpected thrill through me. What do you want, Caroline? I paused, debating how far I should push this, but before I could say anything more, she abruptly hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, then smiled. She was desperate. I could feel it even in those few short words. Freya wanted Aaron's attention. She wanted his approval. But she wasn't going to get it. The next morning, I decided the time had come to move forward with my plan. I reached out to my friends in the Redwood Pack, including Rebecca Winters. Together, we worked to spread word to Freya. The message was simple. Aaron wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. He would offer her territorial rights in exchange for leaving. It was cruel but necessary. If she refused to leave, she would use this cub to strengthen her position. At first, the news seemed to work in my favor. Freya agreed. But then, just as quickly she backed out. It didn't make sense. Why would she agree to go through with the termination, only to change her mind? The answer came to me in a wave of cold dread. She was stalling. She had a plan. She was waiting, using time to solidify her position. The cub would change everything. Aaron might even begin to see her differently. No, I couldn't allow that to happen. I wouldn't. So I made a decision. I would confront her myself. Take Freya's POV. The pack house was quiet, too quiet. Aaron had left early in the morning to handle pack business, leaving me alone again. I stayed in my quarters, staring blankly at my phone. It hadn't stopped buzzing all morning. Caroline's friends were relentless. Their calls came in from different numbers, but I blocked each one without hesitation. Still, their persistence rattled me. My conversation with Grace Hunter at the medical facility replayed in my mind, sharpening the edges of my thoughts. Her bravery in the face of her mother's control amazed me. She was so young, yet clear in her stance. I touched my stomach, feeling a stir of warmth from Bella within me. Her protective instincts were growing stronger every day. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to remember the joy I felt when I first suspected I was pregnant. The subtle changes in my body hadn't gone unnoticed. My wolf had alerted me before the test results confirmed it. I felt happy, excited even. I wanted to share the news with Aaron immediately, but then doubts crept in. Would he be happy? Would he see it as a blessing or as an obstacle? The thought of termination made Bella howl with sadness. My own heart clenched at the mere idea. I can do this, I whispered to myself, my fingers brushing lightly across my stomach. We can do this. But being a rejected Luna, the whispers and judgments would never stop. Could I really endure that? The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. Another unfamiliar number. This time I hesitated. Was it another of Caroline's allies? This time, instead of blocking the call, I answered. Silence stretched across the line for several seconds. Then, her voice, Luna Freya. It was Caroline. What do you want? I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. We need to meet. I exhaled slowly, debating what to do. Then, almost on impulse, I made up my mind. I'm at the pack house, I said, my tone firm. Come here if you want to talk. The pause on her end was almost satisfying. When she finally replied, her voice carried a hint of surprise. I'll be right there. The moment I hung up, I placed both hands on my belly, feeling Bella surge with emotion beneath my skin. This cub is mine, I said, my voice filled with resolve, and no one will take it from me. The pack house stood before me, its size and grandeur a symbol of everything Aaron had built. Martha Wilson, the pack house manager, answered the door with her usual composed demeanor. Luna Freya will be down shortly, she said, her tone polite but formal. I stepped inside, waiting as instructed. My ears caught the faint sound of footsteps descending the stairs. When I turned, my jealousy flared. Freya appeared, wrapped in a white shawl over a light blue dress. Pale, delicate, ethereal. For a brief moment, I faltered. The sight of her, so serene and unbothered, was unsettling. Martha led us to the sitting room and served us tea. Your special herbal tea, Luna, she said to Freya with a touch of care that felt almost reverent. Safe for your condition. My jaw tightened as I watched Freya accept the cup calmly. The way the staff treated her. They truly saw her as their Luna. It wasn't fair. She had everything I should have had. If I hadn't left, it would have been mine. Freya caught my gaze, her violet eyes steady but not unkind. Her expression was unreadable as she thanked Martha for the tea. I forced a smile, trying to hide my resentment. Your staff is well trained, I commented, keeping my tone light. Freya nodded, her voice soft but confident. They're loyal pack members. My smile tightened. The room felt warmer suddenly, but not in a comforting way. Then I should thank you in advance, I said, letting a hint of sharpness slip into my words. She raised an elegant brow, her gaze questioning but still calm. I watched her closely, gauging her reaction. Your well-trained pack staff will make it easier when I come to visit, I clarified, studying the way her beautiful violet eyes changed. For a moment, the room was silent. My words hung in the air like a challenge waiting to be met. Chapter 24. A Pointed Proposal. Caroline's sharp eyes swept across the sitting room, her perfectly arched brow lifting in faint disappointment. She reached up, delicately brushing an invisible speck from her white blouse. Can we speak somewhere more private? Caroline's tone was soft, almost musical, but there was a forced charm behind it. Her lips curved into a poised smile, but her golden eyes held a silent challenge. The main house feels a little crowded today. The room wasn't crowded at all. A few pack members passed through with polite greetings, their footsteps light and distant. But I knew exactly what she meant. The presence of others unsettled her. I hesitated, my wolf Bella stirring uneasily within me. Bella rumbled her disapproval. She didn't trust Caroline, and neither did I. Yet I couldn't outright refuse her. Memories of the past flickered through my mind. Images of Aaron as a young wolf, wounded from battle, and Caroline's hand pulling him from danger. She had saved his life. All right, I said calmly, hiding the reluctance tightening in my chest. Follow me. I led her through the winding halls of the pack house. The wooden floor creaked faintly beneath us as we stepped outside into the garden. The scent of blooming roses filled the air, and the sun cast warm golden light across the neatly trimmed hedges. I walked ahead until I found a secluded corner near a tall vine-covered trellis. "Here," I said, stopping between rows of fragrant flowers. "This should do." Caroline's heels clicked softly against the stone path as she followed. She glanced around, her eyes briefly scanning the area for onlookers. Satisfied with the privacy, her pouty lips pulled into another polished smile. "This is perfect," she said, her voice silky and smooth. But I heard the faint bite underneath her words, like a wolf's growl hidden behind the rustling leaves. I crossed my arms, keeping my gaze squarely on her. "What did you want to discuss?" Caroline didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her sleek designer handbag, the faint rustle of leather breaking the silence. She pulled out an envelope, its cream-colored surface pristine, the edges sharp. The emblem of the Redwood Pack gleamed in gold at the top. It was an official document. "This," she said, extending the envelope toward me. "It's for you." I eyed it warily but took it. The smooth paper was cool against my fingers as I broke the seal and removed the folded contents inside. My stomach twisted the moment I scanned the first few lines. Territory rights. Not just small plots or overlooked tracts, these were significant. Prime hunting grounds and valuable resources. Caroline's voice broke the silence, light and measured. "Take your time," she said sweetly. I wanted to ensure everything was clear. I folded the paper back neatly, holding it between pinched fingers. "What exactly is this intended for?" Her smile deepened, and she took a step closer. The faintest whiff of perfume wafted toward me, jasmine and honey. The scent felt as carefully curated as her words. "Consider it a token of respect," she said, her tone rich with false warmth. "Your service to the Northern Ridge Pack has been noted, and of course—" Her hand reached out, lightly brushing against my arm. The gesture was casual on the surface, but there was something deliberate in the touch. "It's meant to support you in, well—" Caroline's golden gaze flicked to my stomach just briefly before meeting my eyes again. "Your condition." The air shifted between us, heavy and charged. My pulse quickened, my fingers tightening around the folded document. My wolf Bella snarled softly inside me, her instincts snapping to life. The word condition echoed in my ears, loud and grating. Caroline's hand lingered a moment too long, the faint pressure on my arm both condescending and invasive. I forced a calm expression, though anger bubbled just beneath the surface of my skin. "That's very thoughtful of you," I said evenly, though my voice felt like it was slicing through glass. "It is," Caroline agreed quickly, oblivious or perhaps indifferent to the tension in my tone. "I thought, considering everything, it might be helpful. You could use this to rest, recuperate, maybe make plans for the future." The phrase might have sounded kind coming from anyone else, but from Caroline, it was sickly sweet poison. Every word felt carefully chosen to remind me of my precarious position. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sounds of the garden filled the silence, birds chirping on distant branches, the faint rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze. I met her gaze squarely, holding firm. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline." Caroline blinked, her composure flickering for just a heartbeat. "Decline?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, even as anger burned in my chest. Her perfect smile faltered. "Perhaps." She hesitated, smoothing an invisible wrinkle in her blouse. "Perhaps it's not enough, is that it?" "No," I replied firmly. She leaned forward slightly, her golden eyes narrowing as she tried to gauge my reaction. "If that's the issue, we can negotiate. We could add hunting grounds or resources, whatever you need." Her words quickened, her previous poise slipping away. She thought I would falter, that I would accept the offer in exchange for peace. But she was wrong. "Caroline," I said quietly, cutting her off. "The answer is no." Her lips parted, her incredulous expression wavering between confusion and frustration. "I don't understand," she said after a moment. "Freya, this is a generous offer. It's an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" I asked, pinning her with an unwavering stare. "To disappear? To make things easier for everyone else?" She flinched, ever so slightly, the mask of control cracking just enough to reveal a flash of irritation. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly, trying to recover. "I just thought." Her voice trailed off, but the unspoken words lingered in the warm air. She didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood her perfectly. Both she and Aaron had decided what was best for me, for the cub, for everyone except me. My hand hovered over my stomach, the faintest motion as Bella growled protectively within me. "You thought wrong," I said, my tone sharper than before. Caroline straightened, her spine stiff. For the first time, her carefully controlled expression hardened, her golden eyes flashing briefly with something colder. She was used to being the one holding the cards, the one in control. This refusal, my outright defiance, didn't fit into her plans. Before she could respond, I folded the document once more and placed it back into the envelope. "Thank you," I said, my voice clipped. "But I won't be accepting." Her lips pressed into a thin line, any trace of the earlier sweetness long gone. "Freya," she started again, her voice sharper now. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said simply. "I'm making my own choices." My hand unconsciously moved to my stomach, and Bella rumbled contentedly within me. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I would keep this cub, raise it myself, without interference from either Aaron or Caroline. No territory rights, no pack ties, nothing that could give them leverage over my child's future. "But surely," Caroline started again, her composure cracking slightly. "No," I said firmly, meeting her gaze directly. "Thank you for the offer, but I must decline." Accepting those rights would only create more complications, more ways for them to control us. My cub and I would make our own way, free from their manipulation and games. Caroline's lips pressed into a thin line, her earlier sweetness evaporating. She clearly hadn't expected this level of resistance to her carefully crafted proposal. Chapter 25, Territory and Resolve. My chest tightened as I watched Freya push the territory rights document to the side without even a glance. The silence between us was almost unbearable. I had rehearsed this interaction in my mind countless times, carefully planning every word. This wasn't how I imagined it would go. "You haven't even carefully reviewed the terms," I said, unable to keep the hint of frustration from my voice. Still, I masked it with a smile. "These hunting grounds are among the best Redwood Pack has to offer. Surely you'd want to take a look." Freya remained composed, her calmness unsettling. There was no anger, no outburst. It was like I wasn't even fazing her. "I appreciate the effort," she finally said gently, her voice steady. That gentleness only made me feel worse. She sounded like she pitied me. "You have no idea the opportunities included in this offer." I pushed the envelope closer to her across the small table. My own hands were trembling slightly, so I quickly clasped them together in my lap. "This isn't just about land. It's security, comfort, a new beginning." Her eyes flicked to the envelope but didn't reach for it. I glanced at her hands on the table, one of them lightly resting on her stomach. My suspicion flared again. She wasn't hiding it anymore, was she? My throat tightened, but I forced myself to regroup, softening my tone. "I'm offering this personally. It's not just from Redwood Pack. It's from me. Please consider it, Freya. If not for yourself, then for, your situation." Situation. The way her lips curled faintly at the word made my wolf bristle. She let the word hang in the air for a moment before sitting back in her seat. "My situation isn't a problem," she said, her tone kind as if she were letting me down gently. She paused before continuing, her hand now visibly shifting to rest protectively over her stomach. "While I admit my pack lost its territory, I've managed to support myself just fine. I won't be needing this." I froze at the unmistakable gesture of her hand. My heart thudded in panic as the realization struck me like a blow. She was keeping it, the cub. She wasn't just defying me, she was defying logic. "You're keeping it," I said, my voice coming out in disbelief. I couldn't hide the shock from my face. Her calm violet eyes met mine, making my stomach churn. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even trying to. "You need to think this through," I hissed, leaning toward her. "Freya, do you have any idea what this means? What it means for Aaron, for the pack, for you? This could ruin everything." "It means," she replied softly, her eyes never wavering, "that I'm making the decision I believe is right, for me." Her words infuriated me. I shot to my feet, grabbing her shoulders without thinking. "This isn't just about you. Do you understand what you're doing? The consequences? Aaron has a future to think about. A mate bond severance doesn't need complications like this." She didn't flinch under my grip, didn't look away. Her calmness only fueled my anger. "It's my body," she said, "and my decision." For a moment, my entire body stiffened as her words sunk in. It wasn't just her soft tone, it was the stubborn resolve behind it. She wasn't going to be swayed. "I won't change my mind," she added quietly. Her gaze pierced me so deeply that my hands fell from her shoulders. I backed away, shocked and for once speechless. "I can find my way out, Caroline," she said with the same infuriating composure. The in my carefully crafted veneer widened into a gaping hole. Forcing my legs to work, I turned and stormed away, leaving her behind in the garden. The sound of my hurried steps broke the unsettling silence and I hated myself for letting her see me rattled. I hated her for winning this confrontation without even having to fight. Freya's bee. I stood frozen for a long moment after Caroline left. It was as if her tense presence lingered in the air even after she was gone. Bella growled with approval inside me, but my heart felt heavier than ever. With a sigh, I bent down and picked up the envelope that Caroline had dropped during her hasty retreat. She hadn't even noticed she left it behind. The crisp redwood pack seal stared back at me. This wasn't mine to deal with. This was Aaron's problem. I straightened up and tucked the envelope into my pocket, deciding to deliver it back to him later. He could pass it back to Caroline, along with whatever hollow assurances he'd used to smooth things over. That evening, I walked through the halls of the pack house, my mind a storm of emotions. When I reached the quarters that Aaron and I had shared for 2 years, I leaned against the doorframe and stared at the space with a growing sense of unease. I moved to the wardrobe mechanically, pulling out clothes and carefully folding them on the bed. Packing should have been simple, but with every drawer I opened, I found new memories hiding among the mundane. The silk scarf he'd handed me as a casual gift during our first winter together. The book of wolf legends we'd read at night during his rare moments of leisure. My hand lingered over a small trinket box housing a pair of earrings he'd given me after the annual Alpha Summit. Memories upon memories poured out of the little details, threatening to overwhelm me. 2 years wasn't a long time, but I had integrated into this space more deeply than I realized. I forced a deep breath and grabbed only the essentials. Clothes, documents, nothing more. I couldn't do this otherwise. The sound of Aaron's black SUV pulling up outside the pack house jolted me out of my trance. My hands briefly stilled over a folded sweater before resuming their work. His footsteps echoed down the hallway until he entered and froze at the sight of the suitcases by the bed. One was already full. The wardrobe door hung open, half of the clothes missing. "What are you doing?" His voice cut through the air, sharp and low. I turned slowly to face him. The envelope in my hand felt like a physical weight. Without a word, I held it out to him, watching his brows furrow as he took it. For a moment, he flipped through the documents in confusion. "These are the territory rights papers I granted before. But what's this?" His dark eyes traveled to Caroline's document. I didn't miss the flicker of realization that crossed his features. "Caroline left that for me earlier," I explained coldly. My voice came out steadier than I expected. She wanted me to take it. I told her no. Aaron's lips tightened as he lowered the envelope. His confusion shifted to something unreadable. "Why didn't you claim the other territories either?" he demanded, though there was no anger in his tone, just a strange, questioning tension. "I don't need them anymore," I replied simply, keeping my tone neutral. The silence that followed carried 1,000 unspoken words. The weight of everything between us settled heavily over the room. Finally, I broke it. "I'll be moving to the upstairs guest quarters tonight." His gaze hardened ever so slightly. "And after that?" "I'll leave after Elder Catherine's treatment is complete," I said evenly, "and after the official severance of our mate bond." I turned away, returning to the suitcase I was packing. The task had seemed like a way to keep my hands busy earlier, but now it felt like the hardest thing in the world. Every little piece of clothing I folded was a goodbye. To this place, to him, to the fractured dream I had once thought could bind us. Chapter 26. Breaking Points. The sound of hangers dragging across the closet rod echoed in the quiet room. Each scrape felt heavier than the last as I pulled out my clothes. I folded them neatly and placed them in the suitcase lying open on the bed. My hands were trembling, but I refused to let them falter. The quiet didn't last long. Aaron's steps thundered down the hallway. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't stop moving. He swung the door open without a word, his presence filling the entire room like a storm. His eyes landed on the 2 suitcases, one half packed, the other already full. The open wardrobe with half the clothes missing didn't escape his notice either. "What are you doing?" His voice was quieter than I expected, but cold, sharp, and cutting all the same. "I'm packing," I replied, my tone even. My hands continued folding as though I didn't hear him. "For what?" He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the wood floor. "Running away, are you?" That made me stop. I met his gaze, but I could already see the golden glint in his wolf eyes. Logan was stirred awake, and he wasn't hiding it. "I'm not running," I said firmly. "No?" He gestured toward the suitcase. "Then what is this? A vacation? Or is it because of him?" I frowned. "Him? Daniel Rivers," he bit out, a sneer curling his lips. "Your oh-so-concerned pack brother." My blood boiled. Daniel has nothing to do with this. Doesn't he? Aaron took a step closer, towering over me, his wolfish aura pressing down hard. "First, it's long lunches. Now you can't wait to leave. What's next, Freya? A love confession?" I stiffened. "Don't twist this into something it's not, Aaron." "Twist?" His voice raised just slightly, his tone sharp like a blade. "Explain it to me, then. Why the rush? Did Daniel offer you something better?" My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Daniel is my friend. That's all." "Friend," he repeated coldly, taking another step. His hand shot out, gripping my arm tightly. His strength sent heat rushing under my skin. "You're hurting me," I said through gritted teeth. Bella growled faintly inside me, a low, protective sound. "And you're hurting me," he snapped. His wolf eyes locked onto mine, filled with both fury and something I couldn't name. "I don't know what is going on in that head of yours," he continued, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. "But this sudden urge to pack and leave, it doesn't sit right with me. What are you hiding, Freya?" I glared up at him. "I'm hiding nothing. You're the one who suggested ending this bond in the first place. Or have you forgotten?" For a second his grip loosened, his brows furrowed, but the anger didn't leave him. Instead, it simmered, boiling just beneath the surface. "And now you're using my decision as an excuse to run," he accused, his tone mocking. "You must have been waiting for this moment all along, haven't you?" "No," I shot back. My voice cracked slightly, but I never wavered. "Don't act like you know what I've been waiting for, Aaron. You made it clear what this bond meant to you." His laugh was low and bitter. "And what exactly does it mean to you, Freya? Tell me." My chest tightened. His wolf's energy pressed harder against mine, demanding submission. I fought against it, teeth gritted, knuckles white. "What do you want me to say?" I asked, my voice shaking. "That I didn't care? That this has all been simple for me? Fine. Let's call it what it is, a farce to please your grandmother." His wolf eyes narrowed. "So these 2 years," his voice dropped dangerously low, "you've just been acting with me, right? And haven't you?" The words came out with a bitterness I couldn't hold back. Bella's whine echoed softly in my mind, reflecting my pain. Aaron blinked, the fire in his gaze faltering for a split second. His hand fell away from my arm. For just a moment, I thought I saw something under the anger, something like hurt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Fine," he muttered, stepping back slightly. His tone returned to its cold, detached form. "If you're so determined to leave, move to the guest quarters. But we can't make it obvious yet." I crossed my arms. "After we sever the bond, I'll—" He didn't let me finish. "No," he cut in harshly. "Not yet. My grandmother's surgery comes first. She can't know about this, neither can the pack." He turned away for a moment, his hand running through his dark hair in frustration. When he looked back, the fire in his golden eyes had dimmed, but only slightly. "Do you think I want to explain this?" His tone was pointed. "I wasn't planning on making things difficult," I replied, though my own fire was fading too. "I'll wait. For her." "How thoughtful," he said dryly. I flinched. "For 2 years you've walked around playing Luna," he continued. There was no mistaking the venom in his words now. "And now you're falling apart because you couldn't keep up the role anymore." "That's not fair," I shot back, my voice rising again. "Isn't it?" He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "You've been miserable for 2 years, haven't you? Just admit it." He was twisting my words again, turning them into something that only fueled his anger. I'm not doing this, I said finally, stepping back. I was too tired, too drained to keep going. Believe what you want, Aaron. I turned away, shutting him out entirely. My hands rested on the suitcase as I tried to steady my breathing. Bella whimpered softly in my mind. Aaron stood in silence for a moment before he spoke again. His voice was almost quiet, but the bite in his words remained. "But if my presence is so unbearable," he said slowly, "then I'll spare you the trouble. I won't come back here tonight." I froze, my back still turned to him. "Maybe then you'll finally be happy," he added bitterly before storming out. The door slammed behind him, the echo bouncing through the pack house. His words felt like knives, each one lodging painfully in my chest. I sank onto the bed, suddenly unable to stop my hands from trembling. My gaze fell to the suitcase, half-packed and filled with pieces of a life I'd spent 2 years building, and now watched fall apart in a single night. "Luna?" Martha Wilson's voice jolted me. She stood at the door, her face lined with concern. "Alpha Aaron left. Quite upset. I thought I should check on you." I forced a small smile, though my throat felt tight. "I'm fine, Martha. Just tired." Her eyes swept over the room, landing on the half-packed suitcase. Understanding crossed her expression, and her brows dipped in sympathy. "My dear," she said softly, "does this have something to do with Miss Caroline's recent visits?" "Not everything is as simple as it seems," I replied, looking away. Martha sighed heavily, her tone turning reflective. "I remember when Miss Caroline left the pack years ago. Alpha Aaron was different then. I could never have imagined." Her words trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. The shift between Aaron and me had been a quiet storm brewing for years, and now it had finally broken. "Will you need anything tonight?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "No, thank you." She lingered for a moment, hesitating as though wanting to say more, but eventually she turned and left, her footsteps fading down the hall. I hugged my knees to my chest, letting the silence settle around me like a heavy blanket. Bella growled softly in the back of my mind. She wanted to fight, she wanted to stay. But I wasn't sure staying was an option anymore. Chapter 27, A Drunken Alpha. Christopher's POV. I watched as Aaron poured another glass of whiskey. His hand was steady, but his eyes were not. The golden glow was brighter now, a warning that Logan, his wolf, was creeping closer to the edge. "That's his 10th glass," Lucas muttered beside me, his brows creased in worry. "Even for an alpha, this is insane," I nodded. "This isn't right." Aaron drained his glass in one long gulp, slamming it down on the bar with a force that made the wood groan. "Another," he barked. The bartender, Mike, glanced at me hesitantly. "Do I?" he mouthed, but I shook my head. As a lower-rank wolf, Mike couldn't refuse Aaron. None of us really could. Mike grabbed the whiskey bottle with trembling hands and refilled Aaron's glass. "Alpha," Lucas finally spoke, voice low. "Maybe you should slow down." Aaron's head turned to Lucas sharply, his eyes now glowing gold red, blending dominance with fury. Nothing a wolf said with that look could be good. His energy filled the bar, making lesser-ranked wolves sink into their stools or shuffle out the door to avoid his wrath. Lucas flinched under the glare but didn't back down. "It's just, we're worried, Alpha." "I don't need your worry," Aaron growled, his voice sharp like claws. "But," a low snarl cut Lucas off. It wasn't loud, but every wolf in hearing range went stiff like prey caught in headlights. "Shut up before I make you." Lucas swallowed hard and lowered his gaze, his wolf immediately submitting. I sighed, stepping in to diffuse the tension. "Alpha, maybe some food would help. Or water," I suggested carefully. Aaron swiveled his head to me, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Who are you to think you know what I need?" I raised my hands to show no challenge. "Just trying to help, Alpha. You've had a lot. Enough for 10 wolves." His lips twitched, and for a moment I thought I saw a smirk. "So what?" he said. Then, gripping the glass, he gestured toward me. "What have you ever known about enough?" He laughed, but it was hollow and dark. Lucas shifted beside me again, clearly uncomfortable. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Why is he doing this? Caroline's back. Shouldn't he be happy?" I moved in closer, keeping my voice low. "You think this is about happiness?" Lucas frowned, confused. What else would it be about? He had the choice to be with her again. This is exactly what he wanted, right? "Maybe," I said, glancing at Aaron's hunched form, "but Caroline's return, it complicates things. You forget what this means for Freya." Lucas blinked as realization dawned. "You think You think it's about her? About Freya? Before I could answer, Aaron's voice cut in. What did you just say? His words were slow but venomous. His golden eyes locked on us. Lucas froze, panic flashing across his face. I didn't. Who among you two traitors said I was reluctant to sever the bond? Aaron's voice carried Logan's growl. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Lucas, ever the opportunist, turned to me and blurted, Chris said it. He was talking about himself. I stared daggers at him. What are you? It's true, Lucas said quickly. He was just talking about not wanting to leave his, Lucas flailed, his hands waving dramatically. Aaron's eyes, dazed and feral, landed on me. For a moment, I saw confusion, as if his wolf was trying to decipher Lucas's rambling excuses. It was enough distraction for Lucas to grab the whiskey bottle and pour him another drink. Here, Alpha, Lucas said, his voice trembling. Drink. Let's not worry about this anymore. I clenched my jaw. Lucas had a knack for making things worse, and this was one of those moments. Aaron stared at the glass for a long moment before bringing it to his lips, likely fueled more by habit than logic. But Logan remained restless. His alpha energy didn't settle. Are you giving me orders now? Aaron's voice suddenly boomed, startling Lucas so badly he dropped the whiskey bottle. No, I swear. Lucas yelped, frantically stepping backward. His hands shook. Never, Alpha. Aaron's lips curled back, and I instinctively stepped between them. Alpha, enough, I said firmly. My voice lacked the authority of his, but it wasn't weak either. Drinking more isn't going to fix this. Aaron's nostrils flared. His glowing eyes bore into mine, wavering between human anger and wolf fury. I braced myself. If his wolf decided I was challenging him, I wasn't sure I'd walk out of here in one piece. Instead of replying, Aaron raised the glass again. He tilted it back, and then swayed. His movements turned jerky, as though his body couldn't keep up with the alcohol poisoning his human side. Before he could drink, the glass slipped from his grasp, shattering on the floor. Then, like a tree falling, Aaron's body crashed forward onto the bar. For a moment, no one moved. The entire bar appeared frozen in stunned silence. Lucas exhaled loudly. He finally hit his limit. He muttered, For a second, I thought the world was ending. I reached out carefully to check Aaron's breathing, deep and heavy, as expected when a wolf drank too much too fast. He's out cold, I said, my voice low with relief. I told you he was drinking too much, Lucas clucked, wiping sweat from his brow. You didn't tell anyone anything, I snapped. Still, his words echoed a truth I couldn't ignore. Why do you think he got this bad? Lucas asked cautiously. Was it really, he lowered his voice further, was it really Caroline? It couldn't completely be Caroline, at least not her alone. The puzzle pieces didn't add up that neatly. Interrupting my thoughts, Lucas grabbed Aaron's phone from the counter. What are you doing? I asked sharply, standing straighter. I just want to take a quick look, Lucas said innocently. You'll do no such thing, I said, snatching the phone away. It was dangerous territory. Our Alpha's privacy was sacred within our hierarchy. Lucas pouted. Why not? Maybe he was texting Caroline and couldn't handle what she said. That doesn't justify breaking protocol, I warned. Well, if it wasn't her, then call her, Lucas insisted. Caroline's the only one who ever understood him. No, I stated plainly. Then what's the plan, genius? Lucas shot back. I ignored him and scrolled through Aaron's contact list. One name stood out, glowing like it had been waiting for me. Freya. You've got to be kidding me, Lucas protested. Luna Freya can't help him. She's hardly the one he wants. He emphasized, hardly, with cruel amusement. I clenched my teeth and tapped her name. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, someone answered, but there was no voice on the other end, just heavy silence. Luna Freya? My voice softened. This is Christopher Brooks. I'm here with Alpha Aaron. Chris, why are you using Aaron's phone? I apologize for the late call, Luna. My voice held genuine concern. But Alpha Aaron, he's had too much to drink at the Silver Moon Bar. He's not in a good state. The silence stretched long, echoing loudly in my ears over the noise of the bar. For the first time in years, I felt nervous speaking to a woman who wasn't even my mate. The weight in that silence felt far heavier than words. Chapter 28, A Night of Regrets. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, absently combing through my hair. The strands fell over my shoulders, but my mind wasn't focused on my appearance. My gaze was fixed on the light curve of my still flat stomach. My hand unconsciously rested there, protective over the life growing inside me. Bella stirred within me, restless. She reflected everything I felt, the pain, the anger, the confusion. My wolf was so used to keeping calm and strong for the pack, but this moment was testing her composure. I set the brush down, but the tension in my body refused to leave. It had been a long day. The argument with Aaron, Caroline's visit, the document she tried to bribe me with, it all tore at me, refusing to loosen its grip. "You did the right thing," I muttered softly, my voice only audible to Bella. My wolf whimpered in agreement, though she remained uneasy. With a deep breath, I turned away from the mirror. Sleep might help clear my head. I tugged the covers back from the bed, ignoring the faint chill in the room. I couldn't afford to think about the empty space where Aaron used to lay, back when things were simpler. My phone buzzed sharply from the nightstand, pulling me from my thoughts. I hesitated before picking it up. Aaron's name blinked across the screen, sending a jolt of emotion I couldn't quite suppress. What could he possibly want now? We'd barely spoken after our confrontation. Would Caroline have said something? Did he already know about the pregnancy? My heart pounded, but I couldn't ignore the call. "Hello?" My voice was guarded. "Luna Freya?" The voice on the other end wasn't Aaron's. It was deeper, calmer. Christopher Brooks. I frowned, gripping the phone tighter. My wolf bristled, alert now. "Chris, why do you have Aaron's phone?" There was a pause, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "Apologies for disturbing you, Luna," he began. "But Alpha Aaron, he's in a bad state." His tone was steady, but I could hear the urgency beneath it. "He's drunk. Too much whiskey. We're at the Silver Moon Bar." I swallowed hard, my free hand curling into a fist. Aaron hardly ever drank, much less to this extent. Whatever had pushed him to this point wasn't trivial. "Is he alone?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "No, Lucas is here too," Chris explained. "But Luna, I thought you should know. He needs someone to bring him back." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I didn't want to go, not after the day I'd had, but Chris's tone left no room for argument. "Give me the address. I'll come right away." I threw on a coat over my nightgown and headed out. The drive to Silver Moon Bar was tense and quiet, the hum of the engine the only sound accompanying me. My thoughts swirled like a storm, playing out countless scenarios. Why had Aaron drunk himself into such a state? Was it because of me? Because of Caroline? Or was it his wolf, Logan, reacting to the truth I still hid from him? I shook my head, focusing on the road. My mind was so distracted I almost didn't notice the red sedan swerving into my lane until it was too late. My reflexes kicked in, and I jerked the wheel sharply, narrowly avoiding the collision. My pulse raced even after the other car drove away. Bella growled softly in the back of my mind, her protective instincts igniting. I pulled into the bar, parking in the shadows. The Blue Moon's neon sign flickered faintly in the dark. I stayed in the car for an extra second, gathering my thoughts. I didn't want to do this. Not after everything, but there was no turning back now. As I stepped out, my wolf senses caught a familiar scent, jasmine and a hint of honey. My eyes narrowed, scanning the lot until I saw her. Caroline. She was heading toward the bar entrance, her movements smooth and elegant despite the late hour. Everything about her radiated control, her posture, her presence, her flawless dress. It made my stomach turn. I lingered near the shadows, uncertain whether to follow her. But then the bar doors swung open again, and I caught sight of him. Aaron. He was swaying, his shoulders slumped and his usually sharp eyes dulled from drink. Chris held one of his arms, supporting him, while Lucas was on his other side. Caroline trailed closely behind. My heart clenched painfully at the sight. He looked less like the Alpha I knew, and more like a man beaten down by the weight of his own choices. "Aaron, let me help you," Caroline said softly, stepping closer to him. Her hand touched his wrist gently, her voice dripping with concern. Aaron stopped, turning to look at her. For a brief moment, I thought he might let her in, but then his expression changed. In a sudden motion, he grabbed her wrist tightly. "Don't," he mumbled, his voice slurred. "Don't go." Caroline's eyes lit up with something that looked suspiciously like triumph. "I won't," she whispered, her other hand brushing against his arm. "I'll stay with you." But then, just as abruptly, he flung her hand away. The motion was so unexpected that Caroline stumbled backward. her heels slipping against the pavement. Lucas barely managed to catch her before she fell. "Aaron!" she gasped, stunned and clearly flustered. My breath caught. The scene before me felt surreal. My wolf was shifting within, her emotions tangled with mine. I turned away, unable to watch any longer. The sight of Aaron rejecting Caroline should have brought me some twisted satisfaction, but it didn't. All I felt was exhaustion. Why had I even come here? I couldn't do anything for him. Not in this state, not like this. Getting back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel tightly. My wolf whimpered softly in the back of my mind, but I ignored her. This had been a mistake. "Aaron," I said gently, stepping forward, "let's get you back to the pack house." But Aaron shook his head weakly, his body swaying. "Chris, take me home." Caroline stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her voice was honeyed, but there was an edge to it now. "Aaron, I'll take you to Redwood territory. You'll be better off there." He leaned away from her touch, his words slurred but clear enough. "No, not Redwood." Lucas and I exchanged uneasy glances. "He's drunk," Lucas muttered under his breath, trying to smooth things over. "He doesn't mean—" "Chris." Aaron's voice cut through. Even in his state, the command was firm. "Take me home." The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline's expression faltered, her usually composed face showing real emotion for the first time. I could see the disbelief, the frustration. She had never been turned away like this before. "You don't know what you're saying," she said sharply, her voice losing that sweet veneer. "You had too much to drink, Aaron. You're confused." Logan's presence surfaced again, stronger this time. Aaron let out a low growl, clearly agitated. Caroline flinched but recovered quickly. Lucas hesitated. "Chris, maybe Caroline's right? It'd be easier if—" "He asked me," I said firmly, straightening under Aaron's increasing weight. "I'll take him back to the pack house. That's what the Alpha wants." Caroline glared at me, her composure cracking further. "He's in no state to know what he wants." Caroline's voice was steel. "He needs proper care. I'll take him to my territory." Chapter 29, A Night of Choices. Supporting Aaron was no easy task. A drunk Alpha wasn't just heavy, his wolf energy hit like a storm, wild and untamed. Lucas stuck close as we lugged him out of the Silver Moon bar. Caroline hovered nearby, her heels clicking on the pavement with sharp precision. "Let me help." Caroline's tone was warm and sweet, but there was steel beneath it. She wasn't asking, she was stating. Her hands darted to Aaron, brushing his arm lightly. "We should take him to my territory," she added confidently, as though the decision had already been made. Lucas readily nodded, his admiration for Caroline clear. "It makes sense, Chris. She probably knows how to handle him better than anyone." I stopped walking, tightening my hold on Aaron. My wolf bristled. This wasn't merely about where Aaron slept tonight. There was something deeper, more weighted in Caroline's urgency. "He's coming with me," I said firmly. I kept my voice calm, but left no room for argument. Caroline blinked, clearly surprised by my pushback. Her gold eyes narrowed, but she kept her smile composed. "I don't think that's a good idea," she replied. "He'll be better off with someone who understands his needs." "And I don't." My voice was sharper this time. I met her gaze directly. He called for me while drunk, repeatedly. The tension between us thickened. Caroline's wolf energy prickled, even if she outwardly appeared calm. It was subtle, but it was there. She didn't like being challenged. "But he's not thinking straight," Caroline countered. Her hand slid down to Aaron's shoulder. "We all know he won't remember this anyway." Lucas stepped in quickly, trying to mediate. "Chris, she's got a point. Caroline has experience. You saw how she handled him during that pack summit last year." I ignored Lucas, keeping my focus on Caroline. "My responsibility is to the Alpha, not to his company," I stated coldly. My grip tightened on Aaron, signaling the discussion was over. Caroline's expression faltered, her practiced poise slipping for a fraction of a second. Still, she wasn't done. "Chris," she began again, softer this time, "Aaron matters to me. Let me do this." I shook my head. "Not tonight." There was a long pause. For a moment, it seemed as though Caroline might argue further. Her nails dug into her palm, and her perfectly lined lips pressed together in annoyance. Finally, with great reluctance, she stepped back. "Fine," she said, but her words were bitter. Lucas looked between us, confused. "Why are you being so stubborn, Chris? What's the harm?" I started walking again, this time pulling Aaron more resolutely toward my car. "It's pack law," I said over my shoulder. "No unmated female spends the night with a mated alpha. You know that." Caroline's laughter followed me, sharp and mocking. "Is that the excuse now? Pack law? Even Freya doesn't care about that." The mention of Freya made me pause, just briefly. Caroline's smile widened at the reaction, seeing she'd struck a nerve. "If Freya cared," Caroline continued smoothly, "she would have come when you called her, wouldn't she?" Lucas, emboldened by Caroline's words, chimed in. "Exactly. What does it matter if it's political? Freya's made it clear. She's not interested in Aaron." I didn't respond, not because they were right, but because those words carried truths I couldn't argue tonight. Freya's silence on the phone earlier, her delay after I said Aaron's name, nagged at me. Had she seen everything? Caroline stepped closer again. "He doesn't belong in some apartment on a couch, Chris. Take him to where he's truly cared for." That was enough. "Thank you for your concern," I said firmly, cutting her off. "But we've got it handled." I helped Lucas load Aaron into the back seat, ignoring the furious looks Caroline shot my way. She was persistent, but protocol and position worked in my favor tonight. As we drove to my place, Lucas couldn't hold back anymore. "What was that about? Since when do you care about old, outdated pack laws?" "It's not outdated when it's the Alpha's reputation we're protecting," I countered. Lucas scoffed. "Protecting him? You're forcing him to crash on your couch when Caroline has an entire estate. You're being ridiculous." "You don't understand," I replied curtly. "What don't I understand?" Lucas looked exasperated. "Caroline saved his life. You think anyone in the pack would question her helping him now?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. It's inappropriate that his own mate doesn't care enough to show up," Lucas shot back heatedly. "You called Freya, didn't you? She didn't come." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, my mind replayed the phone call. The way she hesitated before answering. Her voice was steady then, but something about her repeating "thank you" felt off, almost mechanical. "She has her reasons," I said finally, though even I didn't fully believe it. Lucas snorted. "Right, and Caroline's reason is what? Actually caring about Aaron? Looks like one of those women should be standing by his side, and it's not Freya." I clenched my jaw, refusing to rise to the bait. This wasn't a debate about who deserved Aaron. It was about making sure the Alpha didn't spiral further out of control. Once at my apartment, I instructed Lucas to wait by the car. I didn't want Aaron waking up to more voices, or to Caroline storming back in, trying her luck again. "Make sure she leaves," I told Lucas. He frowned. "You're serious?" "Very." After settling Aaron onto the couch, I grabbed a blanket and stood over him for a moment, watching his shallow breaths. The Alpha I knew, sharp, calculating, always one step ahead, looked entirely different tonight, vulnerable, torn. My wolf stirred uneasily. We both knew this mess wasn't just about the whiskey. I woke to daylight piercing my skull like knives. Every small sound, each carp outside, the chirp of a bird, felt amplified. Logan, my wolf, growled sleepily, just as miserable as I was. The room spun briefly as I sat up. My senses, dulled by last night's drinking, barely registered where I was. This wasn't the pack house. Not Caroline's place either. Chris's apartment, came Logan's groggy realization. "Morning," Chris greeted, placing a glass of water on the coffee table. "You'll want to drink that." I groaned, leaning forward to take it. My head pounded with every movement. "What happened?" "You asked to come here," Chris said simply, watching me closely. Vague flashes of the night before came back. The bar, the drinks, Caroline leaning into my space, my rejection of her sudden touch. But there was something missing. Someone. Logan stirred restlessly. "Her scent isn't here," he rumbled, disappointment lacing his tone. I tried ignoring my wolf's restlessness. "Why didn't you just take me?" I trailed off, uncertain where I was even suggesting. "Caroline's?" Chris raised an eyebrow. "She wanted that too, but pack law doesn't allow it." I scoffed weakly, rubbing my temples. "Since when do we follow that so strictly?" Chris didn't flinch. "Since it matters." There was an edge to his voice that made me pause. I studied him, catching the guarded expression on his face. "What aren't you saying?" I asked. Chris leaned back slightly. "I followed your instructions," he said after a beat. "You were very clear about where you wanted to go and who you didn't want around." That pulled me upright, ignoring the way the room tilted slightly. Who did you mean? Chris hesitated, his wolf eyes briefly flickering gold before returning to his usual calm demeanor. She came, he said pointedly, but she didn't stay long. You told her to leave. Something felt off in his words. My wolf didn't trust the vague deflection. She, I repeated, my tone sharper now. My heart hammered oddly, though I wasn't sure why. Who are you talking about? Chris didn't immediately answer. Logan growled low in the background, his impatience a reflection of my own. Who came, Chris? This time my authority sealed the question. With those two words, the faint sliver of hope lodged in my chest refused to fade. Chapter 30, A Misunderstanding, Aaron's View. Chris stood by the counter, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. He leaned casually, a hint of a smirk playing on his lips as he looked over at me. Rough night? He asked, amusement laced in his tone. I didn't reply immediately. My head felt like it had been split into two, and Logan was restless within me. The wolf wasn't aggressive, but he wasn't calm either. That unsettled me. I don't need commentary, I muttered, massaging my temple. Chris raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed by my mood. Fair. But you might want to know something. I straightened up slightly, sensing he wasn't just here to make small talk. I called Freya last night, he said, his voice taking on a more serious edge. His words hit me harder than expected. I tried not to react, but Logan surged, needing to know more. I kept my expression neutral, unwilling to give Chris the satisfaction of seeing how those words affected me. And? I asked, feigning indifference. Chris tilted his head, studying me intently before answering. She didn't come. Something sharp twisted in my chest. I clenched my jaw, not trusting myself to speak right away. She didn't even care enough to check on her so-called mate? Chris pressed, his tone challenging now. Before I could respond, Lucas barged into the room. His usual loud energy filled the space, contrasting sharply with the tension. He had a goofy grin on his face as he sauntered in. You'll never guess who came last night after my call, Lucas started, his excitement bubbling over. Caroline. Logan bristled instantly at her name, a guttural growl echoing in my chest. Both Chris and Lucas froze, their attention snapping to me. What? I growled, though my voice was colder than my wolf's. Lucas looked uncomfortable, but continued. She was worried. She dropped everything to come to the bar as soon as she heard. He said it like it was supposed to earn my gratitude, yet it only deepened my irritation. She took care of you while Freya... Lucas hesitated before finishing. While Freya didn't bother showing up. Again, Logan stirred uneasily. My wolf had very clear ideas about who I belonged to, even if my human side tried to deny them. I stared at Lucas coldly, dismissing his words without addressing them. I didn't trust myself to say anything just yet. Seeing my blank reaction, he looked nervously between me and Chris before awkwardly excusing himself and leaving the room. The sound of the door closing felt like a relief. Chris waited a few moments before speaking. You're awfully quiet. I ignored his probing tone, deliberately scrolling through my phone instead. My fingers paused as I saw the call log. There it was, Chris's call to Freya, as he had said. Still, something didn't sit right. Freya's silence last night, why hadn't she come? She didn't respond, I said to Chris, my voice low and tense. Chris leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. No, she didn't, he replied calmly, but there was something in his voice, something unsettling. After a moment, he spoke again. But I tried again later. My gaze snapped to his, sharp and questioning. And? I demanded. He hesitated for the first time, which only fueled my impatience. She answered, Chris finally said carefully, but her response felt off to me. I frowned, feeling Logan's irritation surge in tandem with mine. Off how? Chris sighed, setting the mug down and meeting my gaze head-on. I think she might have come by the bar. What? I said, my voice harsher than intended. She might have seen outside with Caroline and Lucas, Chris continued, his tone steady but deliberate, and she might have left because of that. I scoffed, rejecting the idea instantly. She wouldn't. You're sure? Chris asked. His eyebrow quirked as if daring me to think harder. She doesn't care enough to do something like that, I bit out. Chris didn't argue, but the weight of his silence pressed down on me. It was a question he didn't have to say aloud. Are you sure, Aaron? The tension was cut by the sudden buzzing of my phone. I glanced at the screen. It was Caroline. Chris straightened slightly, watching me closely. I got up to take the call, But before I left the room, he stopped me with a final question. "Have you figured out what you really want yet?" he asked quietly. I didn't reply, but his words echoed in my mind as I answered the call. Freya's POV. The Birch Tree Cafe was warm and bustling, but I barely noticed the chatter around us. My focus was entirely on Emily as we sat across from each other. "You're really going to do it?" she asked for the third time, her tone softer now. I nodded, though my wolf Bella was restless inside me. She had been calmer since I'd made up my mind, but the reality of severing the mate bond with Aaron still stung deeply. "It's the best option," I said quietly. "For me, for the cub, for everyone." Emily frowned, her hands cupping her warm mug of tea. "I still don't understand why you have to leave entirely. Can't you stay and raise the cub here?" The thought sent a pang through me, but I shook my head. "No, I can't." "Why not?" Emily pressed. "Because," I hesitated, glancing around the cafe, "because staying here will only make things harder." Bella growled softly in agreement within me. Emily sighed, leaning back in her chair. "So what's your plan? Go back to Snowfang Packlands? What's left of them anyway?" I shook my head again. "No, I don't know yet, but I'll find somewhere. Maybe with my remaining pack members, if they'll take me." For a moment, doubt flickered in Emily's eyes. "And you think you can raise a cub on your own out there?" Her question wasn't meant to hurt, but it did. I straightened my shoulders, refusing to let the pain show. "I'll manage," I replied firmly. "I have to. For the cub." Emily sighed heavily. "You're stronger than I'd be in your situation, I'll give you that." The tension eased slightly as we shifted the conversation, discussing practical matters. I began to feel a flicker of excitement talking about the cub. "I'm going to need to prepare," I murmured, half to myself. Emily perked up. "Prepare for what?" "For everything," I replied, my voice laced with quiet determination. "A new start, a new life." Her eyes softened. "Do you know if it'll be a boy or a girl?" I shook my head, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Not yet." We lapsed into a lighter conversation, imagining the differences between raising a male or female wolf pup. Bella stirred happily within me at the thought, her protective instincts surging. Hope began to mix with my anxiety. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had something to look forward to. No matter what happened with Aaron or the Northern Ridge Pack, I had the cub. My cub. And that was enough. As Emily continued to talk, I found myself envisioning a peaceful life somewhere far away. A life where I could raise my child without fear or judgment. It wasn't a dream I'd ever planned for myself, but it was a dream I could learn to love. Chapter 31, A Debt of Honor. Emily's face lit up as she twirled her spoon in her coffee, her excitement nearly spilling over onto the table. She leaned forward, her elbow dangerously close to my nearly empty teacup. "Just think about it, Freya. If it's a little boy, he could grow up to be the strongest warrior in the pack." Her voice was bubbling with enthusiasm, and she practically bounced in her seat. Or, oh, what if it's a girl? She could be a diplomat like you, but even better, a smart and stunning little she-wolf. I tried to smile, I really did, but my heart wasn't in it. Her excitement felt misplaced. Warm, but misplaced. I stirred my tea and stared at the light ripples on the surface, my voice quiet as I replied, "I haven't really thought about it that way, Emily." She blinked at me, her enthusiasm faltering, only briefly. "What? Why not? This is big, Freya." I shook my head, my lips pulling into a thin line. "It feels too early to dream like that. There are other things I need to focus on first," I said. My words came out softer than I meant, but the weight behind them hung heavy. Emily's smile didn't fade, but her eyes softened. She reached across the table, brushing her fingers against mine where they held the spoon. "I know you're scared," she said gently, her voice lower now, "but you don't have to do this alone." Before I could say anything, her excitement reignited, as if fueled by an idea. Her eyes widened and she grinned. "Oh, I've got it, Freya! I can be the cub's pack guardian. I'll help with everything. Diapers, hunting, even first howls. Doesn't that sound amazing?" I blinked at her, surprised. "Emily." "No. Think about it," she interrupted, sitting up straighter. "I could even move closer. Not just for the pup, of course. It's not just about that." She tripped over her words slightly, back waving her hand as if to brush them away. Her eagerness was endearing in a way, but I could see through her offer. She wasn't doing it for herself or even entirely for me. She was doing it because she cared about me and my cub. Emily, I said softly, my tone more serious now. You know you don't have to do that for me. You've already done so much. She frowned, leaning in like she was trying to convince me. But I want to, Freya. You're my best friend. And this cub, they're going to be incredible, just like their mom. Her words warmed me, but they also weighed on me. I didn't want to be the reason she turned her life upside down. Let's take it one step at a time, okay? I don't even have a plan yet. Emily hesitated, visibly holding back her argument. But finally, she nodded. All right, one step at a time. But I'm serious, Freya. You don't have to shoulder this alone. Before the conversation deepened further, Emily's expression shifted, her lips pressing into a thin line. Speaking of support, or the lack of it, has Caroline contacted you again? The question snapped me out of my thoughts. My fingers tensed slightly around the handle of my cup. She did, I said, keeping my tone calm. Emily straightened immediately. What did she want this time? I hesitated. There was no point in hiding it. She came to the pack house yesterday. Her eyebrows shot up. She what? She brought me an envelope, I continued. It was an offer for some territory rights. Emily's reaction was instant. She slammed her hands onto the table, rattling the teacups. Territory rights? Is she serious? Her voice was loud enough to draw the attention of a few nearby patrons. Emily, lower your voice, I urged, glancing around. But she was past caring. Her face was flushed with anger and her fists clenched. That woman has some nerve. Who does she think she is? She's trying to help, I said, even though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. Emily's gaze snapped back to me like I'd just betrayed her. Help? By offering land like she's the Luna? By acting like Aaron is hers to fight for? Emily. I started, but she was just getting started. No, Freya, this is ridiculous, she hissed, leaning closer now but with no less fury in her voice. First, she returns unannounced. Then she inserts herself into every part of Aaron's life. And now she's bribing you with territory to leave quietly? Her words stung, though they weren't directed at me. It's not that simple, I murmured, more to myself than to her. Emily scoffed, throwing her hands up. How can you even defend her after the way she's treating you? I looked her directly in the eyes. Because she helped me once, Emily. She didn't have to, but she did. My words brought her rant to a sudden halt. She stared at me, stunned. What are you talking about? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It was right after we lost the Snowfang territory, when things were bad. Emily looked at me with a mixture of confusion and concern. Freya, what happened? The memory surfaced like an unwelcome wave. Shadows and chaos, the metallic scent of blood, the hollow echo of silence after the rival wolves retreated. Our resources were frozen, I began slowly. We didn't even have enough hunting rights to sustain the pack. That's when the rival wolves came. They invaded. Took everything. Emily's face grew pale as realization dawned. I remember hearing about the attack. Wasn't Alpha Jensen? I nodded. He was leading them. They caught my father just outside the pack house. I swallowed hard. They were brutal, Emily. He tried to fight them off, but there were too many. Oh, Freya? She whispered, her hand reaching for mine. They had him pinned when Jensen got a phone call, I continued. My voice wavered, but I pushed through the memories. 1 minute, they were about to deliver the final blow, and the next they were retreating. What stopped them? She asked, even though she already knew. He said it was out of respect for Miss Redwood. Emily sat back in her chair, stunned. Caroline? She called me after, I confirmed. Arranged for safe passage, sent a healer for my father. She saved us. Emily shook her head, still processing. Why? You two weren't even friends. I hesitated, remembering Caroline's voice over the phone that day, the awkwardness, the unspoken emotions. She said it was for Aaron, that she considered me a friend because of him. Emily exhaled sharply, her anger momentarily replaced with incredulity. She really said that? I nodded. She even asked me not to tell him, to keep her involvement private. Why? Emily pressed, her disbelief clear. Because she wanted to let him go, I said, the realization settling in my chest. She was trying to make peace with his choice. Emily stared at me, her expression unreadable. And you accepted her help? My father was dying, Emily, I said quietly. The pack was gone. I didn't have a choice. Her face softened, understanding replacing her earlier anger. I swallowed hard, the memory of that car ride to the medical facility flooding back. how my father had questioned me, worried about the future consequences of accepting help from Caroline Redwood of all people. How I'd tried to reassure him, even though I barely believed my own words. Maybe Aaron and I aren't... My old words echoed in my head. Maybe the moon was just playing a cruel joke. Chapter 32. Pack Bonds and Pride. The memory of my father's recovery replayed in my mind as I sat quietly in the corner of Birch Tree Cafe. I could still hear the strain in his voice, the weight of our family's defeat thick in the air back then. "Freya," my father had said, his voice remarkably steady despite his broken body lying in the hospital bed. His pale face had contrasted sharply with the strong Alpha he'd once been. "We must repay Caroline Redwood for what she has done." I had stared at him in disbelief, gripping the side of his hospital bed tightly. His breathing had been strained, but there was fierce determination in his eyes, a determination that refused to accept the reality of our situation. "Father," I had replied, my voice barely above a whisper, "we've lost nearly everything. How can we talk about repayment when we have nothing left to give?" My father's expression had hardened, his gaunt face drawn with the pride of a once feared Alpha. "We haven't lost everything," he had shot back. "We still have the pride of the Snowfang pack, and I refuse to see it destroyed." "But what about survival?" I had countered. "Pride won't put food on the table or protect us from rival packs. We need to be practical, Father." For a moment his expression had softened, as though he was seeing me not as his daughter, but as a wolf forced into responsibility far too early. Survival without pride is not survival at all. It's submission, and the Snowfang pack does not submit. I remembered looking away, unable to meet his steely gaze. He had always been stubborn, but at that moment, I'd realized just how desperate he was to hold on to the pack's dignity. "Caroline didn't help us out of kindness," my father had added bitterly, his tone sharp. "She helped because of Aaron, and you know it. And what does that change?" I had pushed back, frustration creeping into my voice. "Her help saved you and our pack members. That's what matters." His weathered hand had reached out to grip mine, weak but firm. "Freya, you don't understand. Every favor comes with a price. Caroline's act of kindness binds us." I'd fallen silent, unable to argue. Deep down, I had known he was right. Caroline's actions hadn't been selfless. She wasn't that type of wolf. But in those desperate times, with my father fighting for his life and our pack cornered, I hadn't had the luxury of questioning her motives. "We can't afford to be in debt to her," my father had declared, his voice gaining strength. "We rebuild on our terms, not hers." And then he said something that stayed with me. "Pride may be all we have left, but that's enough to start again. Effort and time will rebuild us, not charity." I remembered that moment painfully well. Even as I had agreed to mate Aaron and form a political union, I had made sure to transfer all my financial assets to my father, knowing he'd need them more than I would. A familiar pang of guilt stabbed at my chest. I swirled the coffee in my cup without drinking, my focus shifting to the picture of Aaron and me on my phone screen. In the photo, we were smiling, beaming even. It looked so natural, so convincing. Was it ever real? I muttered under my breath. Bella whimpered softly inside me. She hated how I doubted him, but I couldn't help it. Deciding wasn't easy, and I could never shake the thought of how this entire arrangement had started. I pushed those thoughts down, telling myself that it didn't matter. Not anymore. Elder Catherine's surgery and recovery were due soon. That would be my exit, a clean break. I would ensure Aaron and Caroline could finally be happy. Bella stirred again, nudging me softly. It was Saturday. I blinked, realizing what that usually meant. "Visiting Elder Catherine," I murmured to myself. I stood and grabbed my coat, reminding myself that Aaron wouldn't likely be there. He was probably preoccupied with Caroline, as always. The drive to the Pack Healing Estate felt longer than usual. Maybe it was the weight of the day, or maybe it was just the memories swirling in my head that twisted the road ahead into reflections of the past. When I arrived, the estate greeted me with its usual serenity. A staff member rushed to meet me, a beta wolf named Rebecca Martinez, who handled much of the day-to-day care for Elder Catherine. "Luna, Freya?" Rebecca began, her tone filled with relief. "Elder Catherine has been waiting anxiously for you all morning. She refused to leave her room, afraid she might miss you." I felt a pang of guilt at that. Though Elder Catherine's sharp eyes rarely missed anything, she had softened with age, and her bond with me had only grown stronger. "Has she eaten?" I asked, as I followed Rebecca toward her quarters. "Only a little," Rebecca replied. "She said she wasn't hungry without seeing you first." The mention warmed my heart, but it filled me with an ache as well. I couldn't forget what I was walking away from. When I entered her room, Elder Catherine sat by the grand window in her elegant chair, wrapped in formal robes that carried the Steele family's crest. The golden embroidery caught what little sunlight streamed in, making her look every bit the regal matriarch of the Northern Ridge pack. "My dear girl," she smiled when she noticed me, her weathered cheeks creasing gently. "I thought you'd forgotten about me today." Her words came with warmth, but there was a playful edge to her tone, though it didn't mask the faint worry in her voice. "How could I forget you, Elder Catherine?" I moved closer to take her extended hands, both of us sharing a moment of closeness that I had come to cherish. As soon as her hands touched mine, she frowned softly. "Your hands, they're like ice, child." I opened my mouth to reply, but she squeezed my hands tighter, cutting me off before I could think of an excuse. "Has my grandson not been looking after you properly?" she demanded, her brows furrowing deeply. Her concern was genuine and undiluted. I tried to pull back, but her grip was remarkably strong for someone her age. I shook my head quickly. "Aaron's just been busy. It's nothing to worry about." "Busy? Busy with what?" she pressed, narrowing her sharp, wolfish eyes. "And why is he not here with you today? Does he leave all these visits to you?" I glanced away, unsure how to respond. How could I explain without betraying the delicate threads holding our political mating together? "Honestly, Freya," Elder Catherine continued, her tone shifting to something closer to chastisement, "you're his mate, not his subordinate or his assistant. He should know, he must protect you." Her words stirred something inside me, a conflict I'd been trying to suppress for so long. She saw me as more than just the Luna in title. She saw me as family, perhaps more than Aaron ever had in recent months. Chapter 33, A Morning Visit, Freya's POV. "He's just resting after a late night handling pack business," I lied, forcing a calm and practiced tone. Each word felt like a betrayal, heavy against my tongue. Beside me, my wolf Bella shifted uneasily, sensing my discomfort. Elder Catherine's sharp eyes lingered on me for a moment, searching for something unsaid. Her gaze carried the wisdom of years as alpha female, and for a moment I thought she might press further. But instead, she sighed delicately, nodding. "Our alpha's duties can be quite demanding," she replied. Her voice was soft, but her tone carried a faint flicker of disappointment she didn't bother to hide. My throat tightened. I couldn't meet her gaze for long. "Yes," I murmured, lowering my head slightly as though in agreement. But we both knew it was an excuse, one that barely held together. He should have been here. He always came to visit her with me, and yet this morning his absence cut into the air like a sharp blade. Before she could dwell on it longer, I hastily attempted to redirect her attention. "Would you like to visit the garden, Elder Catherine? The air is fresh today and the moonflowers are in full bloom. I think you'd enjoy it." Her expression softened immediately, her sharpness fading like a cloud passing the sun. "That does sound lovely," she said, a faint smile appearing on her lips. With care, I placed a thick shawl over her shoulders and carefully adjusted the blanket across her frail legs. Though age had drawn many lines on her face, her aura of authority remained unshaken. Even when seated, she looked poised, elegant, and every bit the revered matriarch she was. "Comfortable?" I asked, double-checking the folds of the soft fabric to ensure she was warm enough. "Quite," she replied, her smile deepening into something genuine. Pushing the wheelchair slowly, I guided us away from her room and through the estate's sunlit corridors. Along the way, the pack staff who crossed our path would bow with quiet respect. I watched their careful movements, the way they seemed to instinctively lower their heads in reverence to her presence. "Young wolves now," she murmured softly, following my gaze, her tone carrying the slightest hint of nostalgia. "Where did the time go, Freya? Sometimes I still feel like the girl giving orders at my first pack council meeting, and now." Her words trailed off, leaving behind a wistfulness that pressed against my chest. "You're still that same strong alpha female," I said warmly. "Age hasn't changed your strength. If anything, it's turned you into someone all wolves look up to. You've guided us with wisdom only time could bring." She glanced back at me, her lips curling with amusement. "Careful now, my dear. Flattery will get you far." "It's not flattery," I assured her, smiling back. "It's the truth. I used to think you and my mother were sisters when I was a pup. You looked so much alike, so graceful, so powerful." The words seemed to touch her deeply, as her hand reached out weakly to rest over mine on the wheelchair handle. For a moment, the lines of her face softened further, her heavy burdens momentarily lifting. "Your mother was an extraordinary she-wolf," she said. "And so are you, Freya." The sincerity in her voice made my throat tighten again. I leaned closer to her, giving her shoulders a light squeeze. "You've been like family to me ever since I joined this pack. No, more than family. You're my true pack elder." Her gaze turned misty, her lips parting ever so slightly in surprise. Slowly, she patted my hand once more, a rare show of affection for someone so composed. We turned down a winding stone path, heading deeper into the Healing Estate's garden. Moonflowers and wolfsbane swayed gently in the breeze, their pale colors shimmering under the sunlight. Every step seemed to draw us closer to tranquility. "I may have lost my run beneath the moon," Elder Catherine said softly, "but sometimes I think the wisdom I've gained was worth the trade." "You haven't lost it," I added quickly. "The moon still runs through you. It shows in every decision you make for the pack." She chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling. "Such thoughtful words, my dear. You always know how to lift someone's spirit." I was about to respond when a familiar scent caught me off guard, making Bella bristle immediately in the back of my mind. Strong cedar and grapefruit. I froze instinctively before turning toward its source. And then there he was. Aaron rounded the garden's wooden archway, his movements relaxed but deliberate. He was dressed in a crisp shirt and trousers, his usual sharpness intact, but my senses quickly picked up on something else. Beneath the scent of his cologne lingered a faint note of jasmine and honey. Caroline. My chest tightened painfully as I pieced it together. He must have spent his morning with her. The image of their closeness, the stolen scents, the shared moments, burned itself into my mind. "Grandmother," Aaron said smoothly, his signature charm in full effect as he approached her. "Wonderful to see you this morning. I wouldn't miss our visit." Her brow furrowed slightly in confusion, her attention flickering briefly toward me. But Freya said, "I finished my pack work earlier than expected," he cut in with a winning smile. Luna, Freya must have been mistaken. If Elder Catherine noticed the cracks in my expression, she didn't mention it. I stepped aside automatically when he reached for the wheelchair handles, my movements stiff and jerky. His hand extended toward me briefly, as though to offer a polite gesture of acknowledgement, but I didn't respond. Instead, I took another step back, withdrawing. The shift did not go unnoticed. For a brief moment, his eyes darkened, a flash of irritation crossing his face as his wolf Logan stirred within him. His expression returned to neutrality quickly, but I couldn't miss the tension sitting beneath it. "Is something wrong?" Elder Catherine asked, her voice cutting through the growing unease. "Not at all," Aaron replied smoothly, recovering as though nothing had happened. His tone was calm, but I could feel the heavy undercurrent of his temper aimed silently at me. As we continued walking deeper into the garden, I deliberately let the space between us stretch wide. I didn't want to be near him. His fresh appearance, the scent that clung to him, felt like a cruel reminder of the night he'd spent elsewhere. But my distance didn't keep him at bay. "Keeping up appearances, Luna?" His voice echoed unexpectedly in my mind, sharp and accusing through our mate connection. I startled briefly, but kept my face blank as Elder Catherine admired the garden's flowers. His irritation poured through the bond like hot flames. "Do you think this is a game?" Avoiding me, stepping back, "What are you trying to accomplish by acting like this in front of her?" I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from responding aloud. My wolf Bella roared at the words, her fur bristling defensively. "You're being ridiculous," he continued, his mental tone seething. "Careful, Freya. It almost looks like you want her to suspect something's wrong." His accusation sent a spark of fury through my chest, coursing hot and fast. How dare he insinuate I would use Elder Catherine against him? He was the one whose actions had caused the fracture in our mating. I almost snapped back through the bond, the words poised on the edge of my tongue. But just as quickly, Bella urged me to hold back, sensing the scene we stood in. Chapter 34. Medical Facility Visit. Aaron's voice was relentless through the mate mind link. He was clearly seething. "Move closer, Freya." His tone was sharp, controlled, but laced with unmistakable irritation. "You're making it too obvious." I swallowed the lump in my throat. My feet felt rooted to the ground, but I forced myself to step closer to him. Each step felt heavier than the last. Bella whimpered uneasily inside me, her mistrust mirroring my own feelings. Reluctantly, I moved close enough for him to reach out. He wasted no time grabbing my hand, his grip firm, almost possessive. The contact made my chest tighten. I didn't want this, didn't want to feel him right now, not after everything. The faint trace of Caroline's scent still lingered on him, subtle but sharp enough to cut right through me. Elder Catherine immediately noticed, and her face softened. Her sharp eyes sparkled with satisfaction as she saw us walking hand in hand. "Ah, now this is better," she said warmly, her voice full of encouragement. "Together again, the two of you." I lowered my gaze to the cobblestones beneath our feet, focusing on anything but Aaron. "Of course," I replied softly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "We had a small tiff, nothing worth mentioning." Elder Catherine nodded knowingly, her lips curling into a playful smile. "Every pair has their moments of disagreement, my dear, but the strength of a bond lies in the ability to forgive." Aaron hummed a low agreement, his grip tightening just slightly on my hand. His golden eyes caught mine for a brief moment, searching. I quickly looked away. My silence seemed to irritate him further, but he said nothing. We walked along the garden's path, silent except for the sound of pebbles crunching beneath our shoes. Elder Catherine's frail laugh disrupted the quiet as she gestured toward the well-tended rows of wolfsbane. "Do you remember, Freya? Your family's estate was always lined with wolfsbane. It's what your dear mother loved most." I nodded, willing myself to focus on her words and not the hand I was forced to hold. "She believed wolfsbane was a guardian flower. She used to say it stood watch under the moonlight when we couldn't." My voice was quieter than I meant it to be, tinged with a faint undercurrent of sadness. "Ah, she was right to say so," Elder Catherine replied, her voice wistful. She reached out to touch a cluster of blossoms, her hand trembling slightly. "The moonlight makes protectors of us all, even during our weakest moments." Aaron offered a slight smile, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. "Freya's mother had a way with words," he remarked, his tone measured. "Freya does too." My throat tightened. His comment caught me off guard, but I refused to respond. His words, though simple, didn't carry any weight when I knew where his thoughts had been just hours ago. Elder Catherine turned her kind gaze to me. "You were always such a bright spirit, even as a child, Freya. I imagine you haven't changed much." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I forced another faint smile. "I try." Aaron squeezed my hand again, likely out of habit. To anyone watching, we looked like the perfect mated pair, the Alpha and his Luna united. But all I felt was the sting of memories flashing through my mind. Memories of nights I spent alone in our quarters while he found Caroline. When Elder Catherine began to reminisce about her youth, I used the moment to steel my nerves. The time would pass quickly if I could just keep my composure intact. But each step under Aaron's watchful gaze was suffocating. By the time we returned to Elder Catherine's room, my resolve was worn thin. I let go of his hand the second we stepped inside, mumbling an excuse about needing the washroom. He didn't stop me, but I caught the flicker of frustration in his eyes before I turned away. The moment the door closed behind me, I let out a shaky breath. I stood in front of the washroom sink for a moment before turning the tap on. The water ran hot, steam curling up around the porcelain. Wordlessly, I grabbed the soap and began scrubbing at my hands. The heat burned my skin, but I didn't stop. My hands felt dirty, though I knew there was nothing there. Invisible guilt clung to me. The thought of touching him, of pretending this wasn't tearing me apart, made bile rise in my throat. The soft scrape of the washroom door startled me. I whipped around as Aaron leaned casually against the wall, his golden eyes watching me intently, glinting with something unrecognizable. "Planning to wash your hands raw?" he asked, his voice laced with mockery. I turned back to the mirror, grabbing a towel to dry my hands. What does it look like? My voice was calm, but the edge was unmistakable. He pushed off the wall and moved closer, his presence heavy. Did you touch something filthy? The sarcasm in his voice cut sharper than any blade. I faced away from him, dabbing at my hands again, even though they were already dry. Perhaps, I replied coolly, throwing his accusation right back at him. Something dark and primal flickered across his face as he stepped even closer, his wolf just beneath the surface. What's the meaning of this, Freya? Why are you acting like this? I didn't respond immediately. His scent, the faint reminder of where he'd been last night, was much too close. It filled the space around me, suffocating and invasive. When I finally spoke, my voice was void of emotion. I don't know what you mean. His jaw tightened. I could see the hint of Logan's fury in the way his muscles tensed. Don't play dumb with me, he snapped. You've been avoiding me like the plague since you saw me. I placed the towel down neatly on the counter and turned to look at him. I met his heated stare, calm but unyielding. If you're looking for an argument, Alpha, you won't get one from me. The title I used struck a nerve. His eyes narrowed, and his tone grew colder. Don't deflect. This isn't about me. It's about you. Of course it is, I replied, folding my arms. It always is with you, isn't it? His breath hitched, a barely perceptible reaction, but one that didn't escape my notice. He stepped closer quickly, his movement deliberate and dominating. His hand reached out and clamped onto my arm, firm but not harsh. Why? He asked again, his voice low and demanding. Be honest for once, is it because you think I disgust you? The venom in his words didn't match the flash of uncertainty buried deep in his expression. His grip on my arm tightened, not painfully, but enough to ground me in place. I refused to flinch. Instead, I met his furious gaze head-on. You don't want the truth, Aaron, I said quietly. Not really. His expression shifted into something between frustration and something else. He took a step back but kept his hand on my arm. I deserve to know. The laugh bubbled up inside me before I could stop it. It escaped my lips, dry and humorless. You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? The vein along his temple throbbed as his grip tightened further. Is it then? Do I disgust you? I pulled back, and with some effort, he let my arm go. Believe whatever you want. I'm too tired to argue. His lips parted to say something, but I brushed past him. I felt the heat of his glare as I walked out of the washroom and headed back down the corridor. He caught up with me before we reached Elder Catherine's room, grabbing my wrist this time. His touch burned like fire, but I didn't pull away. Not yet. I need to know something, he said, his voice quieter but no less intense. Did you go to the Silver Moon Bar last night? Chapter 35, Confrontations and Care. Aaron's golden wolf eyes narrowed, locking onto mine like a predator hunting prey. Did you come to the Silver Moon Bar last night? His voice was low but sharp, each word carefully measured, saturated with accusation. I met his gaze without flinching, though the tension between us felt suffocating. Who told you that? I asked, keeping my tone deliberately calm, as if the question didn't matter, but it did. His jaw tightened, the muscles flexing as a flicker of anger sparked in his eyes. He didn't answer my question, but I knew it wasn't rhetorical. He was baiting me, trying to gauge my reaction. My wolf Bella stirred within me, uneasy but staying quiet. Chris called me about your condition, I said, choosing my words precisely. There was no softness in my tone, just cold certainty. But no, I didn't come. Aaron's brow furrowed as he studied me. Really? His wolf Logan surfed just below the surface, its presence radiating distrust and irritation. I folded my arms across my chest. I did consider sending Martha Wilson to check on you, I continued, my voice light as if I were discussing the weather. But why bother? It was late, and I assumed your pack allies would be taking care of you. I offered him a small, faint smile. I'm sure they've done it before, haven't they? That faint smile tipped his barely controlled anger ever closer to the edge. Your sarcastic little remarks don't suit you, he growled, his words like an audible snarl. Logan's displeasure seeped into his tone. I met his glare with a pointed stare of my own. Regardless, I didn't go. I let out a thin sigh, feigning exasperation. Though I must say, it's touching someone thought I might care enough to rush to your side. Aaron's eyes glinted dangerously. I wasn't sure if his anger or his pride would explode first. What's that supposed to mean? Lowering my arms, I tilted my head at him, pretending confusion. I'm asking one simple thing, Aaron. Have you told your pack allies the truth about us yet? Or are they just covering for you, trying to protect the illusion of the perfect mate bond? His hand shot out, grabbing mine with a wolf's speed and strength. The grip was tight, too tight, and pain immediately raced up my arm. His control was slipping, fueled by Logan's flaring dominance. Enough games, Freya. His eyes burned golden, his voice trembling with restrained fury. We both know how hard you're trying to push me. What are you trying to prove? I said nothing, staring at his hand squeezing mine with too much force. His grip was about dominance, not affection. My wolf Bella whimpered inwardly, wanting to snarl back, but I forced her to stay calm. After a moment of silence, I said evenly, if we're going to keep up this farce, you should make sure your friends know the truth. It'd save them the trouble of calling me in the middle of the night, worried about their alpha's presumed caring mate. Aaron's wolf strength surged, and the bones in my hand warned of their limits as his grip hardened further. I clenched my teeth, refusing to show him the pain. I wouldn't let him see me weak now. His eyes flickered with conflict for a fleeting moment before anger surged again. Without warning, he flung my hand away like it had burned him. I stumbled back but stayed upright, refusing to stagger. He turned sharply and stormed off, his shoulders stiff and his steps hard, making the floor creak under the force of his strides. I stared down at my hand, watching it tremble slightly from the pain. A deep, red mark stood where his fingers had been. I inhaled and exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Bella growled softly within me, but stayed quiet as my mind ran through more pressing matters. These encounters would only grow more frequent. They had to. With our weekly visits to Elder Catherine, I would need to get used to this cycle of tension and veiled hostility. As I approached the wolf healer's office, the sound of two voices caught my attention. I slowed my steps and my enhanced hearing picked up Dr. Anderson's familiar tone. Her recovery rate is exceeding what we initially projected, he said, his voice both cautious and optimistic. Assuming there are no further complications, we may be able to move the surgery up by 2 weeks. I didn't intrude, instead lingering outside the office just long enough to hear a few more acknowledgments between the staff and the healer. Satisfied this was progress for Elder Catherine, I turned to the hallway leading back to her chambers. On the way, Nurse Thompson crossed paths with me, holding a tablet filled with data. "Good evening, Luna Freya," she greeted, pausing to dip her head respectfully. "Did you manage to compile the data I requested?" I asked, forcing my tone back into the measured calm I needed to project. "Yes, everything is here." She gestured to the tablet she carried. Together, we ducked into a nearby sitting area for privacy where I examined the data. Bar graphs and numbers stared back at me, each detail meticulously recorded. Elder Catherine's meal intakes, her sleep patterns, and notes on her wolf vitals over recent weeks. "You see, Luna," Nurse Thompson began, pointing at the charts. "Her fluctuations in mood have stayed within a healthy range, both for her human side and wolf counterpart. There are no inconsistencies." I nodded slowly, carefully scrutinizing the charts. My intuition had picked up slight changes in her recent moods, but none of this corroborated those impressions. "Perhaps I've been overly worried," I admitted after a moment. "Still, I'll need these records printed out for future review." "I'll prepare the document immediately," she assured me, bowing before leaving. I didn't linger. I needed to return. Elder Catherine's chambers were just down the hall, and as I pushed the door open, I stopped short at the sight of Aaron seated by her side. The two were speaking softly, her frail hand clasped securely in his. He smiled at her, genuinely smiled, and I felt a pang in my chest. For a fleeting moment, I saw the Aaron of my childhood. Not the alpha, not the husband of political arrangement, but the boy who'd once swore he'd protect me. Bella whimpered quietly, but I shoved her emotions away. This wasn't the time. Aaron looked up as I stepped inside. Our eyes met briefly before I looked away, unwilling to reveal my inner turmoil. He didn't say anything, returning his full attention to Elder Catherine. I joined them, sitting on the other side of her chair. We played the perfect couple again, careful smiles and soft touches forming the facade we'd built for her sake. To anyone watching, we looked like two halves of a well-bonded alpha pair. As the sky darkened into evening, Elder Catherine clapped her frail hands together. Now, you two have spent enough time here. Go home and enjoy the night together. You should be taking time for yourselves, not hovering over an old wolf like me. Actually, I interjected, avoiding Aaron's gaze deliberately. I'm on leave from pack duties for now. I thought I'd take the opportunity to visit daily while I have the time. Her lined face brightened momentarily, but the smile quickly faded into something cautious, even worried. Oh no, dear, you shouldn't do that. A strong Luna like you doesn't belong spending too much time in a place for sick wolves. It's not good for your aura. Her words struck me harder than I expected. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. Was she pushing me away for my sake, or for hers? Did she feel that keeping distance was necessary because of her condition, or was there something deeper in her words? Before I could muster a reply, Aaron smoothly took over. Grandmother, he said, with that practiced charm that came so easily to him, you're hardly sick anymore. Dr. Anderson says your recovery is going so well they might move up the surgery. You'll be back home before you know it. Chapter 36, Medical Records and Mate Tensions. Back in Elder Catherine's room, I redirected my focus to discussing her upcoming surgery. Despite the emotions simmering under the surface, years of practice allowed me to maintain a light, cheerful tone. You've been taking the wolfsbane tea regularly, right? I heard it's been helping you sleep better, I said, placing a bouquet of fresh daisies on her bedside table. That's a really good sign for the surgery. Elder Catherine's face softened into a warm, genuine smile. Yes, Freya, it has helped some, but honestly, I think your visits help me rest even more. Being around you always puts my mind at ease. Her words made my chest warm, but I didn't want her to see my inner struggle. I smiled and straightened the flowers. Then I'll just have to visit more often, won't I? It might be the secret to you bouncing back even faster. You spoil me too much. Her chuckle was soft, but her voice held so much affection, I felt the weight of it settle in the room. Though I stayed composed, I could feel Aaron watching us. His gaze wasn't cold or filled with anger like before. For once, his wolf-metered golden eyes observed quietly, simmering with something closer to admiration? Or perhaps regret? I wasn't sure. Either way, I wasn't going to let it sway me. Besides, Elder Catherine, I added playfully, you deserve all the attention you're getting. Someone has to make sure the wisest wolf in the pack knows she's appreciated. Elder Catherine laughed again, but there was a slight catch in her voice, like she wasn't entirely convinced. And what about your responsibilities, Freya? Aluna's duties are endless from what I remember. Much more important things than an old wolf like me. I'm on leave from my pack duties right now, I reassured her quickly. So, for now, my job is to spoil you. You'll just have to get used to it. Such a selfless soul, she teased warmly, patting my hand. Thank you, my dear. The weight in her touch tugged at something buried deep in me. For all her teasing, she still seemed hesitant, distant almost. I couldn't tell if it was her health or something else that made her pause, but I didn't have the courage or the strength to ask her outright. As we finished tidying up, Aaron finally spoke up, leaning against the wall. His smooth, confident voice filled the space easily, adding just the right level of charm. You don't know how much I appreciate your attention to family, Freya. It's one of the things about you that the pack admires most. The shift in his tone caught Elder Catherine's attention, and her smile grew even broader. See? There's something special between the two of you no one can take away. I felt the backhanded sting of his words more than his charm. My stomach clenched as Elder Catherine nodded approvingly at us, but I forced myself to stay in the moment. I couldn't afford to dwell. It's an honor, I mumbled, keeping my voice neutral. As Aaron and I exited Elder Catherine's room, I immediately pulled my hand from his. The lingering scent of Caroline still clung faintly to his shirt. I didn't care how subtle it was. My wolf Bella knew better. I couldn't stand it. You can leave, I said without looking at him, stepping down the corridor. There's something else I need to take care of. He followed easily, his tall frame shadowing mine. And what's that? I need to gather Elder Catherine's recent wolf vitals data from the nursing staff, I replied curtly, hoping he wouldn't push further. I'll come with you, Aaron said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I sighed through my teeth but kept walking. There's no need. His pace quickened slightly as he matched my steps easily. It wouldn't look good for an alpha to abandon his Luna at night, especially not when leaving a medical facility. The absurdity of his sudden concern for appearances made me want to laugh outright. Hadn't he done far worse just the other night? But instead, I kept my face blank, pretending his words didn't scratch too close. When we reached the nurse's station, one of the wolf nurses handed me a thick stack of medical records without a word, her eyes dipping respectfully. The tension between Aaron and me was obvious enough even for the staff to notice. Aaron, however, wasn't shy about his curiosity. As soon as we stepped outside, he gestured toward the records in my hands. "What's all this? Why did you request these?" "I've noticed some small changes in Elder Catherine's condition," I replied, stepping further away from him as I scanned the sheets. "Her mood has been different lately, and my wolf has been sensing a shift." His brow furrowed in confusion. "The healers haven't mentioned anything out of the ordinary." "That's because these changes are subtle." I paused, sifting through another paper. "But they're there. Her sleep patterns are different, and she hasn't been eating as much lately either." "Go on." "My wolf feels it," I admitted reluctantly. "I don't know how to explain it. Bella's been giving me this sense. Something feels off. The medical staff may not see it, but I know better." Aaron crossed his arms, leaning slightly as he glanced toward the pages briefly. "And now these records confirm it?" "Yes," I said. "It's faint, but it's there." Despite myself, I could see something shift in his expression. The irritation that had once clouded his features eased, replaced by a mix of intrigue and a faint trace of recognition. For the first time in weeks, it seemed like he wasn't trying to question my every action or decision. "And you're sure this isn't just paranoia?" he asked, though his tone lacked its usual sharp edge. I met his gaze directly. "If it were paranoia, Bella wouldn't be so restless," I emphasized. "Something is different, and we need to figure out why." We reached the vehicle shortly after. Thomas stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back as he waited patiently. "You should remember what you said earlier," I mentioned offhandedly, stepping toward the car. "You made it pretty clear you weren't planning to come home, or have you already forgotten?" Aaron stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I raised a brow but didn't reply. Instead, I slipped into the car quickly, dropping the thick stack of medical records on the seat beside me. The driver hesitated as Aaron stayed rooted in place outside, visibly agitated. "The Alpha has other matters to attend to," I said coolly. "Take me home, Thomas." The pack driver exchanged a nervous glance between me and Aaron, clearly unsure of what to do. His hesitation only irked Aaron further. In one sharp movement, Aaron yanked open the door and slid into the car alongside me. The force of his presence sent the air inside rippling with tension. "Drive," he ordered coldly, his words sharp with authority. Thomas didn't wait another second. He turned the key and began the journey back to the estate. Aaron's POV. The atmosphere inside the car was suffocating. Freya sat silently, flipping through the medical records as though I wasn't even there. Her focus didn't waver, but I could feel the slight hint of satisfaction radiating off her. My wolf, Logan, scoffed at my earlier declaration about not returning home. His instincts were eager to stay near Freya, no matter how much my human pride had been bruised the night before. "I'm curious," I said after a long stretch of unbearable silence. "Why didn't you just ignore those small changes if no one else noticed them?" Freya glanced up briefly, her expression still calm and unreadable. "Because I couldn't. That's not an answer." "My wolf doesn't let go of things that matter," Freya said pointedly, turning back to the data. "Elder Catherine matters, even if these signs end up being nothing." Logan stirred in agreement, satisfied with her explanation for some reason I couldn't entirely place. The regular hum of the car engine filled the void between us. I leaned back slightly, observing Freya's every movement as she busied herself with the pages. Her determination reminded me of the old Freya, fierce, unapologetically bold when it came to things she cared for. For a moment, the memory surprised me. Then, before I could think of anything further, I asked, "So what do you think we should do now about her condition?" Chapter 37. A Fragile Truce. "So," Aaron said, "you really think we should keep this from her?" "We shouldn't keep it from her," I corrected. We should wait until it's necessary. Why cause her unnecessary anxiety? Let her recover as much as possible before we tell her the surgery might be moved up. He closed the folder and placed it on the seat between us, tapping a finger against its edge. She has the right to know. And what would telling her right now achieve? I shot back, keeping my voice even. She trusts us to make decisions that are best for her. What would be the point in making her lose sleep over something that may not even be a finalized decision yet? His wolf eyes flashed briefly. He opened his mouth, likely to argue, but something held him back. Maybe it was the steadiness in my voice. Maybe it was the logic in my words. Or maybe it was the fact this wasn't about him for once. It was about her. She's important to you, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was an observation, almost like he was trying to piece something together. Of course she is, I answered simply. She's family. That seemed to settle something in him. His shoulders relaxed slightly, the light in his golden eyes dimming to something calmer. For the first time in days, the tension between us eased. But peace with Aaron was fleeting. As soon as the discussion about his grandmother was over, the silence returned. Cold, heavy, unbearable. Thomas kept glancing at us nervously through the rearview mirror. I could see the confusion written across his face. He didn't understand our dynamic, and honestly, who could? We had spent the better part of 15 minutes working together like a normal, mated pair, only to sink back into a wall of icy distance. By the time the car stopped in front of the pack house, I'd had enough. I stepped out quickly, not waiting for Aaron. My heels clicked against the stone, each step sharp and purposeful. The pack staff milling around the house stopped to bow slightly as I passed, but I barely noticed them. Behind me, Aaron's steps were slower, more deliberate. He was always measured, always controlled. It was part of who he was. But I didn't need to turn back to know his gaze was fixed on me, assessing, as it always did. As I walked up the steps and disappeared into the house, the faint whispers of the pack reached my ears. Even with my heightened hearing, it didn't take much effort to catch their words. They don't even look at each other, one beta muttered. How much longer do you think until the mate bond's severed? Don't be an replied another voice, hushed but firm. True mates don't break that easily. It's just a bad phase. I clenched my fists at my sides. Of course they were talking. They always talked. A mated Alpha and Luna at odds wasn't just gossip. It was a spectacle, something for everyone to analyze and dissect. Taking a deep breath, I fixed my eyes on the hallway ahead. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. Let them think what they wanted. It didn't matter. When I reached our shared quarters, I closed the door behind me and leaned back against it, exhaling slowly. The noise faded away, leaving only my thoughts and Bella's restless growls. Everything felt calmer now, or at least quieter, but the knot of unease in my stomach didn't loosen. I crossed the room and sank onto the edge of the bed, my thoughts drifting to Elder Catherine. As much as I hated the tension with Aaron, none of that mattered compared to her surgery. My gaze fell to my hands, resting in my lap. I traced the faint lines along my skin, thinking about the choices I'd made. About Aaron, about Caroline, about us. What had I expected when I agreed to this arrangement? That it would be easy? That feelings wouldn't get involved? No, I reminded myself firmly, this wasn't a love story, it never had been. Our mating was transactional, practical. He'd made that clear from the beginning, and I'd accepted it. But the pregnancy, that was different. That wasn't part of the deal. And if he had truly told Caroline about it before speaking to me, I bit the inside of my cheek, my fingers curling into my palm. No, now wasn't the time to think about that. For now, I needed to keep Bella calm. For Elder Catherine's sake, we needed to maintain some semblance of peace. Bella growled softly in agreement, but retreated to the back of my mind, uneasy but compliant. I lay back on the sofa, a book in my hand, and let sleep pull me under. When I pushed open the door to our quarters, I saw her. She was curled on the sofa, her body half hidden by a throw blanket. The book in her hand had slipped loosely to her side as her chest rose and fell in the slow rhythm of sleep. My steps faltered for a moment. Something about seeing her like this, so peaceful, did things to me I didn't fully understand. Logan stirred inside me, his restless energy more curious now than annoyed. For once, there was no coldness in her expression, no guarded tone, No sharp words, just quiet, unspoken vulnerability. Her eyelids fluttered open briefly, revealing those violet eyes that had always caught me off guard. But her gaze didn't linger on mine. It shifted quickly, her walls snapping back into place as if she'd remembered who I was. "Finished in the bathroom?" I asked, my voice steady. She nodded once and mumbled, "Yes," before rolling onto her back, the blanket pulled snug around her legs. Logan huffed at the one-word reply, but I said nothing more, disappearing toward the bathroom. When I came out, the faint light of the reading lamp caught my attention. Freya was now on the bed, her back propped against the headboard, but the book remained closed in her hands. She was asleep again, her features softened by the calm of unconsciousness. I stopped in the doorway, staring quietly. I told myself it wasn't on purpose, but my gaze was drawn to her. The way the faintest shadow of a smile seemed to play on her lips, even as she slept. The way her lashes curled against her pale cheeks, motionless yet captivating. Logan stirred again, his golden energy rippling slightly through my chest. He liked this. He liked seeing her like this. I stepped closer. The room was quiet enough for me to hear the steady rhythm of her breathing, the occasional flutter of her heartbeat. Standing beside the bed, I let my gaze trace the gentle curve of her face, the stubborn jut of her chin. It drew me in, and before I realized what I was doing, my hand reached out on its own accord. My fingers barely brushed against her brow, the faintest touch, before I grazed the edge of her eyelid. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot why this particular woman, my mate, constantly vexed and intrigued me. But then she stirred. Her soft exhale startled me back to my senses, and I jerked my hand away as though I'd been caught stealing something. I cursed myself silently, taking a hasty step back, just as those violet orbs blinked open. I woke to find Aaron standing unusually close, his expression caught somewhere between surprise and guilt. My grogginess faded instantly as my eyes narrowed at him. "What are you doing?" My voice was husky with sleep but edged with suspicion. His features smoothed into an unreadable mask, as they often did when he didn't want to be caught off guard. "Just checking to see if you were asleep." I stared at him for a moment, unsure if I believed him. But what other reason could there be? Shaking my head, I instinctively touched the closed book on my lap. "I'm tired," I said, my tone neutral again. It wasn't a lie. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. As I closed the book and placed it on the nearby nightstand, Aaron's golden eyes followed the motion. His gaze lingered on me longer than usual, unspoken questions brewing within them. "Are you still?" he began, his voice trailing off. But I cut him off before the sentence could take shape. "We should call a truce," I said suddenly. He blinked, his face unreadable. "A truce?" "Yes." There was no hesitation in my tone now. "What do you think?" His brow arched slightly, his interest clearly piqued. "And what exactly does that mean?" Chapter 38, A Fragile Truce. "For Elder Catherine," I repeated firmly. My voice didn't waver, but inside, my stomach twisted itself into knots. This needed to stay clear, professional, impersonal. There could be no misunderstanding. We do this for her sake. We can't afford to mess this up right now. Aaron's golden wolf eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. His jaw was tight. I could feel the weight of his stare, the way he was trying to read beyond the words I had just spoken. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" he asked after a long pause. His tone was calm, but I could hear the tension beneath it. I lifted my chin, refusing to look away. "We return to what we were before," I said, each word carefully measured. "Cordially distant. Polite, focused." Aaron tilted his head slightly, his lips pressing into a thin line. His wolf was close to the surface. I could feel Logan's simmering energy bleeding into the atmosphere between us. He was angry, or confused, or both. "And after her surgery," his voice dropped lower, a soft growl curling into the edges of his words. "After her surgery, you'll be free," I replied, my tone clipped yet steady. I made sure not to hesitate. "Completely free. You'll be able to live your life as you please, without pretending, without me." There, I said it plainly. I hoped he understood. For a fleeting moment, something shifted in his expression. It was quick, like a flicker of pain, but it was gone the moment I noticed it. Aaron straightened, crossing his arms, his wolf posture rigid and confrontational. "Freedom," he repeated, his voice low. "That's what you think I want." I nodded simply. What else could he possibly want from me by now? Aaron was silent for a long time after that, his jaw flexed, his hands curling into tight fists at his sides. I could feel Logan move behind his eyes, restless and unsettled. "Fine," he said finally. His shoulders rose and fell in a controlled breath, though his wolf energy still rippled faintly through the room. "If it's for Elder Catherine, I'll agree to your truce." A dull ache settled in my chest, but I pushed it aside. There was nothing left to say. I turned from him and walked toward the closet, retrieving the long pillow that used to separate us in bed. It felt heavier in my hands than it actually was. My fingers grazed the fabric, memories chasing each other through my mind before I shook them away. I laid it down in the center of the bed like it belonged there, like it hadn't been cast away months ago. Aaron's sharp inhale cut through the silence. "Is this really necessary?" His voice was rough, deeper than usual, laced with something unspoken. I didn't look at him. I focused on smoothing out the pillow instead. "It worked before," I murmured, keeping my voice neutral. "It'll work now." Behind me, I heard him shift, the bed creaking softly under his weight. The tension in the room thickened, pressing against my lungs. "You should sleep," I said firmly as I climbed into bed, pulling the blankets around me. I stayed on my side, my back to him. "We both have a long day ahead." Aaron didn't respond, but I could feel his eyes burning into my back for what felt like an eternity. His body heat radiated faintly across the space between us, but neither of us moved closer. Sleep didn't come easily. The faint scent of jasmine lingered in the air, soft yet unmistakable. It was Freya's scent, mixed with something faintly soothing and infuriating all at once. Logan paced inside me, his growls barely restrained. The pillow between us felt like a wall, like a deliberate symbol Freya had placed to separate herself from me entirely. Logan hated it. He hated the distance, the barrier. And maybe I did too. I stared at the faint outline of her back, her form curled tightly on the other side of the bed. Her breathing told me she wasn't really asleep, but I didn't think she would say anything either. This truce of hers, it wasn't peace. It was surrender, to her at least. She didn't care what happened after Elder Catherine's surgery. She just wanted out. Logan growled his displeasure again, low and simmering. My mind wandered, picking through the words she had said earlier. "You'll have your freedom." She said it like I was trapped, was I? No, this was her choice, wasn't it? She was the one drawing these lines. She was the one pretending this didn't matter. After what felt like hours of lying awake, I sat up abruptly. Freya didn't stir. Her stillness annoyed me almost as much as her words had earlier. I ran a hand through my hair, shaking off the restless tension building in my chest. I hated this. I hated the silence. By dawn, I was still wide awake, frustrated and hollow. When I woke, Aaron was already up and moving. His sharp features looked even more tense than usual. His golden eyes shadowed by exhaustion, he clearly wasn't hiding well. "You," I started, hesitantly holding up a hand. "Your tie isn't straight. Let me fix that." I stepped closer instinctively, reaching for his collar. For a moment, he just stared at me, his eyes unreadable. Then, as my fingers barely grazed the edge of his tie, he stepped back abruptly. "Don't act like you care," he snapped, his tone cutting. "We're alone. You don't need to put on a show for the staff." I froze mid-reach, my expression faltering before I quickly masked it. He was right. Of course he was. I should have known better than to offer anything that strayed outside the limits of our truce. "Of course," I murmured softly, retracting my hand. Without another word, I turned on my heel and left the room. My chest tightened as I descended the stairs, the echoing sound of my footsteps drowning out whatever emotions threatened to bubble up. The pack house was already alive with activity. Omegas and betas bustled about, their hushed whispers following me as I entered the dining area. The moment Aaron walked in, silence rippled through the room. His alpha aura burned cold, unsettling anyone within its radius. Every wolf within earshot lowered their heads slightly, careful not to meet his gaze. He slid into the seat next to me without a word. The tension laced in his movements was impossible to ignore. I kept my face neutral, pretending not to notice the way the staff exchanged curious glances. Speculation hung thick in the air around us, a silent undercurrent I didn't dare address. Leaning forward, I picked up the coffee pot and filled Aaron's cup, my movements slow and deliberate. The liquid poured smoothly, its dark surface steaming faintly. "Good morning, Alpha," I said with practiced cheerfulness, keeping my tone as falsely light as possible. Aaron's jaw clenched at my tone, his wolf eyes flashing gold. The cup rattled slightly as he set it down, betraying his anger at my apparent nonchalance. Chapter 39, Growing Tensions. Another morning. Another suffocating breakfast. I sat at the head of the table, forcing my expression to remain calm, cold. My wolf Logan was anything but calm. He paced inside me, restless and unpredictable, his claws scraping at the edges of my control. Freya sat beside me, graceful as always. Her every movement spoke of poise and perfection. She poured my coffee like it wasn't a reminder of what we had lost. No, what we never had. The small, measured sound of liquid filling the cup felt louder than it was. "Thank you, Luna," I said, keeping my voice even. She smiled softly, that fake, polite smile I had grown to hate. "Of course, Alpha." Her tone was light, but it cut deep. She was going through the motions like we were actors on a stage, yet I felt it, the distance, the wall. The pack staff moved around us, their eyes sneaking glances when they thought I wouldn't notice. Their whispers were barely audible, but I knew what they saw. They saw a mate pair sitting close, exchanging polite words. To them, we looked united, reconciled. If only they knew the truth. Logan growled softly in my mind. He was unhappy, his energy simmering like a volcano ready to erupt. His thoughts were jumbled, but the focus was always the same. Her. My hand tightened around the coffee cup. The ceramic was warm, almost soothing against my fingers, but it couldn't calm me. Nothing seemed to calm me these days. Freya didn't glance my way. She didn't even pretend to look at me unless absolutely necessary. She sat there, pouring herself a cup of tea, her movements slow and steady. "Another full day at the medical facility, Luna?" Martha Wilson, our pack house manager, suddenly asked, breaking the silence. Freya smiled at Martha, a genuine smile this time. It was small but real. "Yes. Elder Catherine likes having company. I think it helps her mood." Martha glanced at me, then back at Freya. "You've taken such great care of her. The pack appreciates it." I said nothing. Logan growled louder, his thoughts clear to me even without words. Why does she give them her smiles, but never us? The staff moved in and out of the room, clearing plates and refilling drinks, casting curious glances our way. I knew what they were thinking. "Do you need anything else, Alpha?" one beta softly asked from the doorway. I shook my head sharply. Freya didn't react, didn't even look up. She simply continued sipping her tea, lost in her own thoughts. It was infuriating, her calm, her distance, her silence. All of it grated on me. Logan pushed against my thoughts, his growls taking shape into words. "She's ignoring us." I clenched my teeth. The whispers from the staff began again, quiet murmurs that only sensitive wolf hearing could pick up. "They're sitting together. That's a good sign. Maybe they're fixing things?" "No. Did you see the Alpha's jaw? He looks ready to snap." They weren't wrong. Logan's claws scraped harder now, his frustration feeding into mine. But I kept still, my face betraying nothing as the breakfast dragged on. The medical facility had become my escape. The rooms smelled of herbal treatments and fresh linens, and the staff greeted me warmly every time. It lacked the tension of the pack house, the suffocating presence of Aaron. Elder Catherine always wore a smile when I arrived. Her gentle eyes sparkled, and the lines of worry on her face softened. "You're spoiling this old wolf again?" she teased one morning as I adjusted the shawl over her shoulders. I laughed lightly. "You deserve it. Besides, it gives me something to do during my leave." She raised a brow knowingly. "It's more than that, isn't it, my dear? You have a good heart. Always have." I didn't respond, quickly turning to arrange the vases on her bedside table. My hand, almost unconsciously, drifted to my stomach. The cub, a small, fragile life growing within me. My heart softened at the thought. Over the past few days, everything I felt about this pregnancy had shifted. I no longer saw it as a burden. Through the faint bond forming between us, I could sense the cub's presence, its energy. Bella, my wolf, purred contentedly, urging me to strengthen that bond. "Hello, little one." I whispered inwardly, reaching through our developing connection. It was almost instinctive now, this need to communicate with the tiny life inside me. I let my fingers linger on my stomach for a moment. A warmth spread through me, soothing, reassuring. Elder Catherine's voice pulled me back to reality. What are you thinking about, Freya? I forced a smile, turning back toward her. Just enjoying this moment. The peace was fleeting, of course. My phone vibrated against the table, breaking the stillness. Glancing at the screen, I saw her name, Caroline Redwood. Bella immediately bristled, growling low in my mind. Everything about Caroline put her on edge. Taking a steady breath, I brought the phone to my ear. Caroline, I greeted, keeping my tone neutral. There was no warmth in her voice. We need to talk, Freya. I pressed my lips together, already anticipating her angle. I know why you're looking for me, I said firmly, but I've made my decision and I'm not changing it. There's no need for us to meet. She chuckled lightly, but the sound was devoid of amusement. Are you sure about that? You owe me, Freya. Don't forget who stepped in during the Snowfang Pack's fall. My fingers gripped the phone tightly, the underlying threat in her words clear. What do you want? Meet me. The moon's shadow. Tomorrow, she commanded, her voice sharp. I didn't agree immediately. My heart raced, Bella snarling in the back of my mind, but I could already feel myself caving under the weight of her manipulation. Fine, I said through clenched teeth. The line went dead. The moon's shadow was quiet when I arrived. Dim lighting and rustic decor created a space that felt oddly neutral despite the tension. Jack Thompson, the owner and a beta wolf from River Creek Pack, approached me. Luna Freya, he greeted respectfully, his deep, scarred voice surprisingly soft. Can I get you something? Perhaps our special herbal blend? It's safe for your condition. His gaze briefly flickered over my stomach before meeting my eyes again. I hesitated but nodded. That would be fine. He returned moments later with a steaming cup of tea. There was an unexpected gentleness in the way he placed it before me, careful, almost considerate. Thank you, I said softly, unsure what to make of him. Caroline arrived shortly after, stepping into the cafe like she owned it. Her perfectly styled hair and designer clothes screamed confidence, but her eyes betrayed something colder. She glanced between Jack and me, an amused smile tugging at her lips. I see Jack's already taking good care of you. I stayed silent, nursing the tea he had prepared for me. Caroline crossed her arms, tilting her head. You know, he'd make an excellent mate once your bond with Aaron is severed. Her words hit like a slap, and Bella snarled furiously in my mind. My wolf pushed against my control, her instincts roaring. Caroline, I said, my tone icy, does my debt to you give you the right to dictate my future mate? She raised her hands, feigning innocence. Relax, Freya. It was just a suggestion. I stared at her, my anger simmering beneath the surface. She was playing her usual games, but this suggestion felt more pointed, more deliberate. You're only being nice, I said coldly, because you think I don't deserve your kindness. Her expression hardened, the mask of sweetness slipping. I thought you were a good wolf, she shot back, even if not particularly bright, but you're just ungrateful. The insult landed, but I refused to react. I simply met her gaze, unflinching. At least this is less fake, I retorted, each word deliberate. The air between us grew heavier, the thin veneer of civility cracking. Her next words came sharp and direct. You need to terminate that cub. The words hit harder than her earlier insult. My grip on the teacup trembled slightly, Bella roaring inside me, her fury unmatched. You called me all the way here for this? I asked, my voice low but shaking with anger. That cub, she spat, is a threat to pack stability. It's a life. My response was immediate, defensive. She leaned closer, fire burning in her dark eyes. Unless this is exactly what you're planning. What are you talking about? My own anger surged, barely contained. She narrowed her eyes, her lips curving into something between a sneer and a smirk. You think I don't know what you're planning? Chapter 40. A Desperate Agreement, Freya's POV. You need to understand, Freya, Caroline said, her voice sharp and insistent, leaning forward slightly. Her usually calm tone was laced with frustration now. This pregnancy, it complicates everything. I pulled back slightly, but kept my gaze on hers, cold and unwavering. My hand moved instinctively to rest over my stomach. I felt Bella stir defensively inside me, her presence a reminder of my resolve. My wolf cub is not up for discussion, Caroline, I said evenly, though my tone carried the weight of finality. Caroline's lips pressed together in a thin line. Her fingers tapped the edge of the table, betraying her inner agitation. Think about the pack, about Aaron, she pressed, her voice dropping as if she wanted to sound reasonable, but it felt more manipulative. Her words hit a nerve, but I stayed composed. "The decision about my cub," I said firmly, my voice rising just a little, "is mine and mine alone, not yours, not Aaron's." Caroline's eyes darkened, her perfect composure beginning to "Freya, you're being short-sighted. This isn't just about you. Aaron's reputation as Alpha King, his leadership, it could all be questioned." I didn't back down. "And that's my cub's fault, is it? Aaron's leadership rests on his actions, not on my child." She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head, looking disappointed, or at least pretending to be. "You're being stubborn," she muttered. Her tone shifted, this time tinged with frustration. "After everything I've done for you, you owe me." The words cut, and I clenched my jaw. I tightened my grip on the table, but forced myself to stay reasonable. "I acknowledge that debt," I said, my voice lower but steady. I locked my gaze with hers. "You helped when my pack was cornered. You gave me and my father a chance when no one else would." "But then repay it," she snapped, leaning closer across the table, her hands flattened against the polished wood, her nails tapping impatiently. "I will," I said sharply, cutting her off. I straightened, refusing to let her bullying demeanor affect me. "I'll repay it however you see fit, but not at the expense of this cub. Do you understand me, Caroline?" Caroline inhaled sharply, her expression hardening even more as she realized her demands weren't swaying me like she'd hoped. "You're making the wrong choice." Her voice dropped, a low, almost threatening tone. I met her challenge head-on, my resolve crystallized in that moment. "Maybe in your eyes I am, but it is my choice nonetheless." For a moment, she looked as if she might lash out or say something that would push this confrontation into more dangerous territory. Then, slowly, she leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. Her eyes flickered with calculation, the wheels turning in that manipulative mind of hers. "Then perhaps," she started carefully, her tone smoother now but no less sharp, "we can come to a different arrangement, one that satisfies both of us, if you're so determined to go against my advice." "An arrangement?" I echoed suspiciously. Her lips curved into a small, practiced smile that I didn't trust for a second. She reached into her designer handbag, her movements careful and deliberate. She pulled out a sleek leather folder and laid it on the table with a soft thud. "What is this supposed to be?" I asked, narrowing my eyes at her. "A way to protect everyone's interests," she said smoothly, though there was an unmistakable edge to her tone. The timing couldn't have been better. Just as Freya hesitated, her defiance softening momentarily with curiosity, Sarah Mitchell, a waitress at the Moonlight Cafe, approached with a steaming glass of milk balanced carefully on a serving tray. Sarah placed the drink gently in front of Freya and dipped her head respectfully. "Special blend for pregnant wolves, Luna Snow," Sarah said softly, her human voice meek yet polite. I forced a soft smile and gestured toward the glass as it glistened faintly under the cafe's dim lighting. "I ordered that for you," I said, my tone laced with feigned warmth. "Taking care of yourself is crucial, Freya, especially in your condition." Freya blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I could see she didn't trust me, though. She kept her guard up, and Bella likely mirrored her silent growls. Still, she nodded stiffly at Sarah before thanking her. Once the waitress moved away, Freya brought her attention back to the folder I had placed before her. Her violet eyes scanned the leather-bound item with suspicion before flicking back toward me. "What kind of arrangement are we talking about?" Her tone was sharp, her distrust hanging heavily between us. I slid the document across the table slowly, holding her gaze as I did. "Take your time. Read through it thoroughly. This isn't something to skim over." While she focused on the papers, her brows furrowing slightly as she scanned the heady legal language within, memories clawed their way back into my mind. I couldn't help it, not as I sat there watching her, so resolute yet still clearly vulnerable in her own way. My mind went back to that day, the rival pack attack. Everyone looked up to me after that, saying I had saved Aaron, that I had been brave. But the truth was that Freya had been the brave one. She had faced down those wolves when I could barely stand without shaking, and yet here I was, seated across from her, once again, controlling the narrative. She didn't even seem to remember what really happened that day. She would never know how much her bravery had contrasted with my own fear. I pressed down on the pang of old humiliation, focusing instead on the power I now held. Everyone believed I was Aaron's savior. That would never change, and Freya wasn't going to take that title or anything else from me. "Well," I asked finally, masking my emotions under a calm facade. "Do you have questions?" I wasn't halfway through the agreement when one particular section caused me to pause. My eyes traced over the carefully worded clause, and my frown deepened. "Why?" I said slowly, lifting my gaze toward Caroline. "Why can't I mention the cub to Aaron?" For the first time, her composure slipped. It was brief, just a moment of hesitation flaring behind her eyes before she recovered. "It's for your own good," she said smoothly. She said, her hands in front of her as if she were trying to seem more approachable. "Aaron can be complicated when it comes to matters like this." "Complicated?" I echoed, not buying her excuse. I felt Bella stir restlessly in the back of my mind, her growls growing louder. Caroline sighed quietly, as if dealing with an unruly child. "Listen to me, Freya. Aaron might be friendly enough toward you now, but another wolf's cub." She trailed off pointedly. A coldness ran through me. "Another wolf's cub," I repeated, my voice low. "Face it," Caroline said bluntly. "He would resent it. And she stopped herself, carefully choosing her words as she straightened. "I only want to protect both of you from unnecessary hurt, complications." I let out a bitter laugh. "Protect me? And how would this protect my cub? Or you, for that matter?" She inhaled sharply, straightening in her seat. Her perfect nails tapped against the table's edge again, a sign she was grasping for control. "Aaron might feel obligated," she said carefully. "He might try to claim pack rights over the cub, a move that could destabilize everything." Her words twisted in my mind like a snake, coiling tighter and tighter. My initial anger fought with a brief flicker of doubt. What if, just what if, she was telling the truth? Bella growled louder, snapping at my hesitation. She could feel my inner turmoil and fed into my frustration. "And what's in it for you, Caroline?" I asked finally, pushing past my doubt to glare evenly at her. "My only interest," she insisted, though her smile was sharper now, "is seeing this matter resolved peacefully." I didn't trust her words, not for a second. Yet I returned my attention to the document anyway, scanning the terms once more. The agreement outlined everything. I would leave the pack territory for a period of 5 years after severing my mate bond. There would be no communication with Aaron before my departure. I would never use the cub to lay claim to pack rights. In exchange, Caroline would provide financial support for my cub. Resources from her redwood pack would ensure the child's upbringing at least until adulthood,